I'll please ask all that are able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sheila, will you please call roll?
Mr. Knoth?
Here.
Ms. Weiner?
Here.
Mr. Lovelady? Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Waterman?
Here.
Ms. Peters?
Here.
Ms. Buffalo?
Here. Well, good evening. The public have multiple opportunities to speak at Columbia City Council meetings. There's opportunity under our public hearing sections, old business, and new business portions of the agenda. We do ask that when speaking to those items, you keep your comments restricted to the legislation being discussed. At the end of the meeting, we have general comments on anything that you want to talk about. You will be given 3 minutes as an individual and may request 5 minutes if you're representing an organization affected by the item. We do ask that for only one speaker of each organization will be allowed the 5 minutes, but multiple people can speak and use the 3 minutes. We do ask that you respect the time limits so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. As with everything in life, there's opportunity for disagreement. I ask that you not applaud, boo, snap, or any other demonstrative action that might intimidate somebody from speaking. I also ask that you do not attack people. We can disagree on issues, topics, but we do show respect for one another. If you do interrupt the meeting or yell from the audience, I will give you a warning to stop. If it continues, you may be asked to leave the building and we might take a 5-minute recess. So next up on our agenda, we have approval of our minutes. I make a motion to approve the July 17th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Andrea. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. I will make a motion to approve our July 5th, 2022 and July 18th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Betsy. All those in favor of those past minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? As a reminder, we're catching up on minutes from last year. And so every meeting we have the most current meeting minutes as well as maybe some from last year. So thank you for your patience. All right, we have approval and adjustment of our agenda, including the consent agenda. We have had a request to move B174-23 and B175-23 from the consent agenda. These would both move to old business. Are there any other changes to the agenda? We did receive an email, and upon the request of the responses to that person withdrew the request to pull from the consent agenda. So I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes of B174 and 175. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Nick Foster, I heard first. All those in favor of approval of the agenda with changes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No, all right. So first up on, we have our special item. So for the past couple years, we've done a Como Capture. This evening, I have the pleasure of presenting 3 of the 4 finalists for our third annual Capture Como Budget Photo Contest. The Capture Como Budget Photo Contest began in 21 for the fiscal year 22 budget with the goal of engaging our residents in the budget process, as well as improving the look of the document for the budget, and it does, thank you. Through this activity, residents are invited to submit their photos from around the community to be considered for inclusion in our upcoming budget book. For the fiscal year 24 budget, over 50 beautiful photos were submitted. While many of the photos can be enjoyed throughout the budget document you see, there were 4 finalists who tied to have their framed photos presented to them. So I would like to congratulate David Spear, Ashley Davidson, and Andy Knoop for having their photos highlighted by the panel. David's photo is on the cover of our fiscal year 24 budget document. The photo is of the 3M wetland, our Flat Branch wetland, Hinkson wetlands. Ashley's photo is of the Pinnacles, which is the youth park just north of Columbia, and it's featured on the cover of the general information section. In case you don't know and you haven't read it yet, the general information section of the budget includes information on our city, as well as how the budget document is organized and how our budget process works. It's worth a read if you're here for this. Andy's photo is on the cover of the health and environment section, and in this section of the budget, you can find information on the health department, community development, sustainability, CV, Convention and Visitors Bureau, along with 5 other departments whose central mission is to preserve, promote, and protect our community. Andy's photo included in this is of Stevens Lake Park. And finally, we do have Julia Young has a few photos featured in the budget. She's not here this evening, but the photo that was chosen by the selection panel is the Rockbridge State Park. And this photo can be viewed in the budget and brief section header. And this section of the budget provides summaries of our revenue, expenditures, personnel, debt, as well as information on the financial health of our organization in each fund. Although Julia isn't able to be here, she will still be recognized with her framed photo. So I'd like to welcome, if they're here, David, Ashley, and Andy to the front to accept these photos and to thank them for sharing their art with us. So come on down. Hey. Is Ashley here? Is Ashley here? Ashley. That's Andy, right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. I'm just going to give this one to our budget people. Ashley is. Does anyone want to? Thank you for allowing us that special item. You know, the arts are very important to Columbia, and so I appreciate including it in something as exciting as the budget document. So thank you, Finance, for starting that. As we go on, there are no appointments to boards and commissions. We'll have those at our next meeting, and we'll go for scheduled public comment. So members of the public can contact the city manager's office by noon the Wednesday prior to a city council meeting to request to do a scheduled public comment. They cannot be on items that are on that agenda tonight. And tonight we have 4 scheduled public comments. So I'd like to first ask Jim Windsor to please come up to the podium.
Thank you. I'm Jim Windsor. I live at 200 Manor Drive. Tonight I'm speaking as a member of the Columbia Fair Electric Rate Coalition. We appreciate you addressing the primary utility financial vulnerability through the power cost adjustment. We were disappointed in the process that limited information provided to you and to the community prior to the electric rate vote on June 20th. We have had time to review the information provided by the consultant, to request and review internal utility documents that were not presented publicly to the Water and Light Board or to City Council, and to develop a plan and proposal that aligns not only with the social and environmental considerations expressed at the June 20th meeting, it aligns with the goals of the electric utility's long-standing plan and investment in demand-side management. In presentation and public accessible documents, the consultant's opinion is that the only consideration for rate design is the cost of service analysis, and that social and environmental considerations should not be included. However, the American Public Power Association, which represents 2,000 public power utilities, including Columbia, states that the difference of opinion reflects a fundamental reality. There is no one-size-fits-all rate design for electric utilities. I was the manager of rates and fiscal planning when we started inverting our rate structure. We did it for a simple reason. It aligned with the utility's demand-side management goal of moderating the increasing summer system peaks. It is also the consultant's opinion that significant distribution system costs should be included in the customer or base charge. Once again, opinion in the electric utility industry varies widely on this topic. It should be noted that the three Missouri investor-owned electric utilities have base charges from $9 to $13 lower than Columbia's new rate of $22. Because my time is limited, I will run through some key points. We submit that the proxy data used in the cost of service does not accurately reflect Columbia, particularly when a decade ago, a different consultant found that the residential and industrial customers were supporting the other rate classes. That consultant used proxy data and also used some Columbia Electric circuit data for predominantly residential circuits. In addition, during that past decade, the electric utility has provided over $9 million in direct rebates and incentives, and Columbia customers have responded by investing over $60 million in energy efficiency improvements. We accept that the July 1st rate changes for the interruptible, industrial, special outdoor lighting, and dusk-to-dawn lighting rate classes are justifiable and appropriate because Columbia data exists. For the other rate classes, we propose that a 7.3% across-the-board rate increase be applied to the pre-July 1 structure as a fair and appropriate approach to meet the revenue requirements until advanced metering infrastructure can provide Columbia data. The majority of customers, including low-income and small businesses, would see a decrease in cost from that approach. High-usage customers will see slightly more than a 7.3% increase because the July 1 rate actually reduced their summer cost. We believe there was a significant failure in the process that required you to decide the electric rate increase on June 20th. We submit that our 7.3% proposal provides the utility with a consistent and stable rate structure that can solidify community support moving forward. We ask that you consider if the rates implemented on July 1st or our proposed rate structure better align with the needs of Columbia Electric Utility, given the serious summer overloading of circuits and substations that will take several years to address. We understand that you won't ask questions or discuss our proposal during the scheduled comment period. However, we hope that one or more of you will follow up on our proposal at the end of the meeting. And yes, it is our opinion that social and environmental considerations are an integral part of rate design, particularly for a public power system. Thank you for your service to the community and for the service to the public utility.
Thank you, Jim. Now I'd like to ask Carolyn Omperon to come. Oh, she's there. Look at this.
Yes, want to keep the meeting moving.
Appreciate it.
I would like 5 minutes if I can.
Yeah.
Carolyn Omperon, speaking for the Mid-Missouri group of the Sierra Club and the Columbia Fair Electric Rates Coalition. Jim has just explained the proposed structure of the coalition's alternative proposal, and I will review why we believe you should consider and adopt it. We understand your reluctance to reopen this discussion for a decision that was so difficult to make. However, we are asking you to consider this new proposal because in addition to addressing the financial stability of the utility, we want the rate structure to support action on climate change and to support those least able to afford climate change impacts. Utility bills are a key factor in determining the affordability of housing. In Columbia, many residential customers are energy burdened, meaning they are spending a much higher percentage of their income on utility cost than a household that is not energy burdened. Based on data from the U.S. Department of Energy, Columbia's energy burden for the lowest income households is 14%. That's well over the national average of 8.6%. For Columbia, this is approximately 8,000 energy burdened households. The problem with the data the city's cost of service study shared is that it only looked at accounts receiving some form of financial assistance. It did not look at all of the households who are struggling to pay their bills, but on time. It was a small number of big users that drove up the financial assistance usage averages that were shared with you. I'd like to refer next to this graph. I'll refer you to Figure 2 for a larger look at low-income usage. A major 2012 study of California electric customers with information on income is revealing. They found that only 8% of low-income customers were high electric usage ratepayers, while in the high-income group, 41% were high electric usage customers. To net it out, the rate structure that was implemented July 1st increased the energy burden on both the moderate and low usage customers. The alternative proposal will increase it as well, but by much less. In the next 20 years, the number of 95-degree days in Columbia are expected to climb to over 26 days a year from an average of 9 or less in the past. The leading cause of deaths due to extreme weather in the United States are deaths from heat waves. Ensuring electricity access and the capability for everyone, despite income, to cope with rising temperatures is one aspect of climate justice. In addition to adapting to the higher temperatures, we must continue to work aggressively to reduce emissions. In case you missed the news, July was the hottest month for the Earth since record keeping began. According to Columbia's latest inventory, greenhouse gas emissions decreased by only 3.1% in the last 7 years. We are not on track to make the 35% reduction goal by 2035. We need more climate action from the city government and from the community. The coalition's proposal restores the energy conservation incentives in the highest usage tiers. For example, in this graph, you can see how the orange line, which represents the July 1 rates, is lower in tiers 3 and 4 than the blue line, and the blue line represents the June rates. The gray line represents our alternative proposal. The gray line reinstates the significant jump in cost per kilowatt hour for tiers 3 and 4. These proposed rates are more likely to support a financial return on investment for anyone who's doing the math on energy efficiency improvements. The Climate and Environment Commission had previously expressed in a memo to the Council their concerns regarding the effects of the new July 1 rate proposal on rate affordability for low-income residents and long-term total emissions. We shared the coalition proposal with the Commission in their July meeting, and they unanimously endorsed it. Now I'd like to ask the members of the public who support this proposal to please stand. Thank you to everyone who attended tonight to show your support. Members of the Council, please evaluate this proposal and adopt it quickly. Thank you to the City Council for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Carolyn. Now I'd like to ask Sutu Forte to please come up to the podium.
Got the timer on. I'm a representative of It's Our Wild Nature. And yes, this is a film by Billy Huggins, an enthusiastic volunteer. We're restoring our land. Volunteers are the core of the work that's been done. Our concern is for the unemployment and the health of all citizens of Columbia. Here is a wonderful opportunity. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. And we are able to pay people now to help, in large part due to the settlement from the city. This is what was there. And because of hiring a new upcoming landscape artist, we'll see what happens to these. They're now called non-native. But I think you know the ones I'm talking about. And hard to save the trees. Here comes the gladiator. This is Chris Voss of Vosscapes. He spent 2 full days, 9 hours a day, uprooting the olive autumn. The ones that shouldn't be there. I've never seen a human being do this. They're up and out. This is the tree of heaven. It took over a whole section. Oh. Chris calls them the cadavers. And now there's open land to the sun. I'm learning that there's a cover crop. They're radishes that we're spreading to hold the soil down before we gather. There they are. We gather the seeds. There they are. And they're bigger now. It's really exciting. There you go. What's happening? Little by little. We want more people to know about this and come join us for pay and pleasure being in the wild. We did it.
Thank you, Suti.
22 seconds to go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Come see us. Call
Thank
me.
you, Suti.
All right.
Now I'd like to ask Chris Jones to please come up to the podium.
Chris Jones, 2nd Ward. Our topic is shifting the culture of the city. According to Columbia's vision, we are the best place for everyone to live, work, learn, and play. The mission statement says that the city is here to service the public equitably through democratic, transparent, and efficient government. Core values state that the city is here to provide the best service to all, to listen, to be accountable, and value excellence, be ethical, fair, and honest. However, I, like many people in our community, believe that these words are just lip service. These values, mission statement, and vision are not the Columbia I and many others experience. Council after council, I sit in the audience and I witness those on the dais, city leaders, city employees violate the city's mission statement, and values. I and many others see through the news and social media as each are violated and public trust is eroded even more. Going forward, I would like each of you, with each vote, each decision you make, to think about how you can do better and shift the culture of Columbia to be a city where we are all proud of living, working, learning, and playing in, of being a city that is transparent and equitable, of being a leader we can be proud of, and making sure that the city is equitable for all of her residents. Week after week, month after month, we talk about crime. However, instead of being proactive, the city is reactive. Policing is reactive. Arresting people is reactive. Yelling at parents and telling them what they are doing wrong is reactive. Telling teens that they have done wrong does nothing but put their back up against the wall. Instead, make them part of the conversation, make them part of the solution. I ask you to follow the values the city has laid out and make sure that the community has equitable access for all, have affordable housing by requiring our developers to dedicate a minimum of 10% of all new builds as affordable housing, build gardens to combat food insecurities, plant food trees on public land, stop putting a Band-Aid on public transit, fix it. Make Ashley Street and the Opportunity Campus a top priority. According to data provided by the Human Service Commission, the city will see a $13 return on every dollar we put into social services. The city cannot afford to refuse to invest in social services at a higher rate. We are at the crossroads of the police department. We are about to get a new chief. It is the perfect time to restructure and change the culture of CPD. Right now, the racial disparity stats say Black drivers are around 4 times more likely to be pulled over than their white counterparts. Unhoused people are arrested for existing while their belongings are discarded. Our community aid groups are threatened by our police officers when they try to help. Meanwhile, short-term rentals are actually illegal in the city. They are. And yet, we've done nothing to do something about that. They are actually illegal. Being homeless is not. We do not need more police officers. We do not need more arrests. We need more social services. We need you to actually step up and vote and make policies that reflect our values, mission statement, and the vision for the city. In closing, last week we had a gentleman who died in a police-involved shooting. Mr. Rivera was shot and killed because he was going through a mental health crisis. Police were at his home and left, and then they came back, and Mr. Rivera's life was taken from him violently. Mr. Rivera's life was precious and worthy. Mr. Rivera's family has asked for copies of the police report along with audio and video footage. I join the family and Race Matters friends in demanding that the city release the requested items to the family. I now ask members of the audience and at home to rise in remembrance of a young gentleman whose life was taken way too early. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on, we have multiple public hearings this evening. Our first up is the fiscal year 24 annual budget for the City of Columbia. So I will go ahead and ask the clerk to please read Public Hearing 2823 and Bill 15623.
Public Hearing 2823 is a consideration of the FY 2024 annual budget for the City of Columbia. Council Bill 15623 is an ordinance adopting a budget for the City of Columbia, Missouri for fiscal year October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, FY 2024, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm going to ask for a staff report, but I also should note this is the first of 3 public hearings, so we will not be making final decisions on our fiscal year 24 budget tonight. So I put that out there in case anyone's excited. All right, do we have a staff report?
Thank
Look at
you all
that
very
picture.
much. So tonight, we do have the public hearing, and we also have some slides to go along with our public hearing, but we really would like it to be a discussion rather than kind of a presentation on what we've had so far. A lot of these items that we're going to present on are items that the council has requested more information on, and there will be several department heads that will assist with this. So kind of an overview, we want to make sure we show the Capture Como finalists, the budget photos. So that would be the first one. We meant to put those up when the mayor was presenting those, but that did not happen. We're going to talk a little bit about social services, capital improvement, and then kind of some of the amendments that we have. So these are the 3 photos that were recognized tonight. Well, I guess 3 of the 4 that were represented earlier tonight. So we just wanted everyone to be able to see those briefly. They're beautiful pictures, and it was very hard for us to decide which ones. So this is the total budget as it stands today for the fiscal year 24 that we are proposing. As you all have heard before, the differences in the expenditures and the revenues are due to capital improvement projects that do not necessarily get spent in the same year that they are budgeted for. And please stop us at any time if you have, questions that you would like answers for. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go through some of these slides fairly quickly. This is the general fund budget. Once again, there is some one-time decision items that are new for this year of about 1.8 going through, and this also does have the differences due to some of the personnel lapse and some of the capital improvements. So the social services contract budget, this is one of the items that was the new decision items that we are seeing. And so this is kind of a history of where the social services contracts have gone over the last few years. Matthew, I think you have some more information.
Yeah, so from fiscal year 23 to 24, we're going to see a 25% increase in funding for those social services. So we want to go over a few of the bond-funded projects as well. So for water, we have a total of $12.2 million in bond-funded capital improvement projects. Here's the total. Did you have any questions on any of the bond-funded projects, or did you want us to go through them in any kind of way?
Tell me how many slides you have.
There are about 30 slides, but
About 30 slides.
yeah, a lot of them have to do with two different issues. So
If you want us to ask questions while we go along, there might have been questions on the social services funding increase,
Okay.
but I don't know if that's also captured in a later slide.
no, it is not. So if you
Okay, then if you're fine with pausing, and I'll try to make sure though that we are staying on a timely, because I want to make sure the public has an opportunity for public hearing. But did you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, just want to be sure, 25% increase year over year in social services funding.
yes.
Any more detail about what that looks like, where that money will go?
I believe we had talked about it before. Do you have exactly what it is?
I know that one of the increases is on like utility assistance that will go up from
300,000 to 600.
600.
And then we have a few other contracted services that we increased this year as well.
Okay.
I don't know that I have a list of those. Those were,
Do you want me to ask Steve Hollis to come up? Your
Sure, that
social
would be
service
great,
funding
yes.
Expert? Sorry, Steve, you made eye contact with me.
For fiscal year 23, the increase.
And Steve, would you introduce yourself, please?
Very sorry. I'm Steve Hollis. I'm the Human Services Manager for the city at Health and Human Services. For this year, for 23, the increases went to a couple things. The overnight warming center that's being facilitated by Wilkes through their Turning Point program. And then we increased some funding for Room at the Inn as well. And then another thing that happened with Wilkes was that we opened Sunday afternoon services. And that was actually really intentional to ease some of the burden on the ARC, because that was one of the only warming and cooling centers on the weekends. For next year, the funds are earmarked to increase the hours of operation at Turning Point from closing at 12:30 to closing at 3:30, and then also to try to establish Room at the Inn year-round. So those are going to be earmarked. We're actually going to be bringing those contracts to you as amendments. So the increase in funding will go to that. I believe the utility assistance funding is actually separate. That's in our budget and social services, direct services. These are numbers are just for the social services funding that goes out in the form of contracts.
Yeah, I just want to note that this funding has remained flat since about 2008. And with inflation, we've lost ground in this area, so I'm encouraged to see that increase this year over year.
In your report that the chair will allude to, we have a chart showing the funding adjusted for inflation, so that's interesting to look at, but it's neat to see it going upward.
Oh, yeah.
You have a question for Steve?
I did, don't know if you can answer this or not, but Room at the Inn traditionally was open from like 5 or 6 p.m. until like 8 in the morning. Is the plan to have it open 365 days a year, but still have that same time frame, or are they planning to be open 24 hours a day?
Not 24 hours a day, as I understand it. I don't think we had enough funding to sustain 24/7. So still an overnight shelter. One thing I forgot to mention that we did this year was they're open until noon on Sundays, and that lets folks on Sundays go straight from the shelter over to Turning Point, which is a big focus of ours, particularly in the winter.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, appreciate it.
Were there any questions about the capital improvement projects with the water, the 12 million?
Betsy, do you have a question?
I do. I'm not even sure how to start this question, though. We've certainly had a lot of controversy about the water bond issue and where we are with moving forward with those projects. How does this impact those projects? I know there's got to be a public works person out there somewhere.
The utilities.
Utilities, I think.
So we have some projects that are currently funded from the previous sale that have been permitted or in process getting permitted from DNR that we could bid those. Then we have another sale that's anticipated to take place later this year that would fund like the water plant upgrades, well platforms, some of the others. I'm not certain looking at this off the top of my head, which ones are from which sale.
Okay. Could we maybe get that information for the next city council meeting?
Yep. I can probably have it for you in a couple days.
That would be good too. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so this is a listing of the electric capital improvement projects. Currently, they're a little over $11 million in projects towards electric.
Probably similar requests, just to show which bond and where the progress is. Last year, you showed us also a Gantt chart of kind of projects of the bonds, and I think an update for that would be appreciated.
Okay, will do.
And I know we have a couple public hearings on some of these items after this one. So, thank you, Dave.
So then the next ones are the solid waste and sewer, a little over $1 million on those projects. Or just, that's on sewer. The solid waste is just is 114,000.
Any questions for Dave while he's up here? Thank you. All right, thank you, Dave.
And so here are our sales tax comparisons for the past few years. We had a huge surprise last year with unprecedented inflation, so that's why there's basically a $10 million difference in budget and actual.
Matthew, can I just pause for the cause? Acronyms at the bottom, what are those?
Okay, transportation sales tax, TST, capital improvement sales tax, park sales tax, general fund, and the PIF is the public improvement fund.
We'll get a chart from now on. We won't use those.
Thank you.
We'll clarify those in the future.
I caught that other places but missed it there.
Appreciate it.
They're common to us.
Yeah, so, yeah, but we're on track in fiscal year 23 to be just about where we budgeted. Right now, this information is through May. So we usually run around 2 months in arrears on sales tax receipts. So, next we wanted to get into the family medical leave discussion. I think Kathy's here to help us with this.
I apologize for the way
Appreciate-
this slide looks. It looks fine when I printed it out.
Yeah, it did overrun a little. And so, this first slide, we wanted to talk a little bit about what the current benefits are for the city. And so currently we have paid long-term disability. We have voluntary benefits of supplemental, hospital indemnity, critical illness, and off-the-job accident insurance. We offer 18 days of sick leave. We have a sick leave advance up to 20 working days per calendar year. We have the sick leave buyback, which happens at the end of each calendar year. We have the injury leave for police and fire, transitional duty assignments, vacation accruals, vacation donation, and then 4 floating holidays, and I think we're adding one in fiscal year 24 as well.
Designated holiday.
Yes.
Any questions on the current list of benefits provided to I guess one thing to go back, those are all provided for all employees, or what is this?
Except for police and fire injury leave, yeah.
And regardless of unclassified, classified, I mean, regardless of whether or not they're represented or not represented?
Correct. It's for all permanent employees, except for, like Matthew pointed out, the injury leave is specific for uniformed police and fire.
Okay.
Here we did a comparison of sick leave compared to others, just to kind of show the amount of sick leave that we offer and the benefit that has to our employees. So we're currently at 18 days per calendar year, and the next highest is the state at 15. I don't know if, is there anything you want to add to that, Kathy?
No, this is recent data that was collected as part of our class and comp study. So that's where the data came from, Siegel.
Oh, here's a usage of our sick leave. In fiscal year 22, we had about 138,000 hours used by about 1,200 employees. That dollar amount came to about $3 million, about $3.5 million, or $24 per average hour. Then we had our sick leave buyback, which about 35,000 hours were purchased back from employees, from about 271 employees, around $500,000. And then fiscal year to date, as of July the 8th, we're at 104 hours used by 1,200 employees for $2.7 million, with our average per hour being up about $2 or $1, maybe $1.50, $1.70.
Fair.
Yeah, a couple questions on that slide. If you can go back.
Can you just real quickly explain sick leave buyback, how that works?
So once an employee has, it's basically 6 months, 6 weeks.
6 months.
Months
Yep.
worth of sick time, they can sell those hours back to the city at a reduced rate. What is?
So it's 50% of their current rate of pay at the time we pay it back for all permanent positions, except for those represented by CPOA. Those are 25% of their rate of pay based on negotiations. And so you have to have 6 months of sick leave built up because that's the elimination period to be eligible for long-term disability. So that's your safety net. You don't want employees selling back that in case they had some type of serious health condition. And then it's whatever you earn that fiscal year. Once you've hit that 1,040 hours, whatever you've earned that fiscal year and you don't use, you can sell back. So in a normal year, that would be a maximum of 144 hours that you can sell back. And I say normal year because this year is a little different. We're actually going to have 27 pay periods instead of 26 because of the way the fiscal year falls. So it's going to be a little bit more than 144 hours this year.
Yes, you gave us some demographics here, and that is helpful to see. When we're looking at sick leave buyback, do we have an estimate? You have your number of employees, but the average age or time with the city of which those who are participating in this program are?
I did not pull that data. Matthew, do you have any data on that?
No, but on average, it takes 6 to 7 years to accrue 6 months worth of time. And so from that time period on is when, so that gives you a roundabout time of the employment for the individuals.
So he said it takes about 6 to 7 years of full-time employment to equal up to to get the 6, potentially, if you haven't probably used
That's correct.
any.
It's a little over 7 years if you don't use any of your sick leave for you to accrue that 6 months before you're eligible.
And then do we track, because you have in here like the usage of these things, do we track those who do time without pay? Once you've
Yes,
used up all
so
your
that-
sick leave and vacation leave?
So for calendar year 22, we had about 42,000 hours of FMLA pay used and about 33,000 hours coded as FMLA no pay, and so it's about 7% of the FMLA hours that are used that are not paid out. So for calendar year 23 so far, we've had about 20,000 hours approved and about 1,200 hours as no pay. So 6% down a little bit this year.
Andrea has a question.
So just to clarify, 7% of FMLA hours are unpaid,
Yes.
approximately?
Okay, so here are the demographics for the
And
permanent
this was the
employees.
handout. For the next 3 slides, I gave you handouts so you could have them all in front of you because it's kind of a lot of information to look at on multiple screens. At the last council meeting, this was a request for some employee demographic information. This sheet really just breaks down total number of active employees. This was as of the pay period ending July 22nd. It's always a picture in time. If you ask me today, these numbers may look different. And it provides you the average age of all active employees, average age of male, average age of female, and the percentage of active male and percentage of active female. And then the next slide breaks it down by gender. Oh,
Yeah.
what happened to the other 2 slides?
I think they're just in the handout.
Oh, okay, they got taken out of the presentation. So you have a breakdown in the handouts that I provided you, so you can see by age group how many we have and what their average years of service are. So I hope that information is what you were asking for.
There are slides at the end of the presentation that give a lot of more information, and that may be where this slide is.
Okay.
So we put together 2 proposals. The first proposal is 6 weeks of paid FMLA. That must be approved for FMLA. The weeks must be continuous, and then the benefit is paid out 75%. The estimated cost of that is around $1 million. And then proposal 2 is an increase to sick leave accrual from 18 to 23 days per year. Eligible, an employee will be eligible to use this sick leave after the first 30 days of employment. And that estimated cost is about an additional $150,000 per year.
Matthew, would you mind going back to the previous slide? Help me understand the weeks must be continuous.
That is basically,
Because we have,
It would-
FMLA does intermittent or continuous, correct?
yes.
It does reduced schedule, intermittent, and it does continuous. The idea was behind continuous was if you had a serious serious event, this would help provide coverage and your sick leave could fill in for those intermittent absences. That was the thought behind it. Obviously, we were looking at costs when we came to you last time. The cost for 6 weeks at 100% was, what was that total, Matt, you came up with, Matthew?
I believe it was around 1.6, 1.5, 1.6
So
million.
we just brainstormed a couple of different options to bring to council and get feedback. And one of them is to do this 6 weeks. And the reason we proposed the sick leave accrual, increasing that, is it does provide more flexibility. It means you don't have to be eligible for FMLA to use it, so your newest employees would be eligible to use it. It can be used for all of the things that sick leave can be used for, which is bereavement, for the care of yourself, a covered family member, for doctor's appointments, all of those things. And you don't have to be here a year to be eligible for that. You only have to be here 30 days before you can start using sick leave. So it was just an option to provide some more flexibility.
Is this an either-or proposal or in tandem?
Well, these were provided as two separate options for you to consider, but we're here to get your feedback. So we're looking at cost and what offers flexibility and want to know what your feedback and thoughts are about it.
So even if we switched from continuous to intermittent, is there a concern about budgetary impact
I think
by moving to intermittent instead?
I don't know about budgetary impact because it could be the same amount. It does become very difficult to track and manage. There are some administrative challenges with intermittent leave.
I'm sure they are. I personally, from my perspective, I think intermittent is more equitable when we're talking about how people use that time. So that would be my preference, is to see intermittent time over continuous.
Yeah, Nick.
Just to clarify, so are you saying it's not possible to do it both intermittent and continuous?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Okay.
just saying these are some options we brought forward for
Right, yeah.
conversation and feedback.
So if we wanted to, we could, if we were doing this, permit it intermittent and/or continuous.
Right, that could be an option, correct.
Andrew, you had one.
Sorry, one more.
that I-
Matthew, you had said that 1.6 was that a 10-week, 12-week, 6-week?
6 weeks.
I believe it was still 6 weeks.
Do we
wasn't
have any numbers on a 10-week timeframe?
it? No, we did not
Okay.
do it.
Thank you.
Nick Foster, and then Betsy, did you have your hand? Okay, Nick Foster.
It would just be helpful for me to see continuous versus intermittent, to see some scenarios for that. What would that look like? How would that be used in real life? Just to have a better understanding about the relationship between the two.
So you mean like a real life example of someone who might use that?
Yeah.
I can give you
Under what
that.
circumstances might someone use it intermittently versus a continuous kind
Sure,
of
I can give you an
circumstance?
example where someone might use all three. So let's just say you had some type of surgery and you needed to be out continuously for 4 weeks. Then your health care provider says, hey, you can come back half days while you build up your stamina. So then you move to reduced schedule. And then you're going to have intermittent for your doctor's appointments and your PT. So for the exact same medical event condition, you could have all three of those leaves. It's very unique to the person and what their doctor says they need for it. So you can have people that can only work half days for a period of time. That's all they need. They can come back to work immediately, but they need to build up their strength. You can have people that have an outpatient procedure, they're gone one day, and they need intermittent PT or follow-up appointments, whatever the case may be. Does that help?
Got it,
Yeah.
thanks.
Also caregivers, include that rather than just a single person who is taking FMLA for themselves, as we're talking about my spouse or child or something gets ill. And where it comes in handy of being able to take intermittent is like, I had my eye out, right? I was only gone for a week, but I have 6 months worth of appointments that I have to attend to. If I had to take all 6 weeks of my time at that, I would lose the opportunity to use it in another way. That is.
Real life. Yeah. Any other questions for Kathy while she's here? Kathy, what do you need from us, or is this continuing the discussion at our next one for clarifying?
I think that, if you have any feedback for us that you want us to go back and either pull information that I have or for us to look at numbers that finance can pull, we need to know that so we can bring that to you. For example, if you want us to look at 10 weeks or some other frequency. We just need that direction so we can provide that to you to help you
I
make
think
your
it's
decision.
helpful. I think I've heard kind of the intermittent and having the options for both. I also like Nick's point about or maybe it was Andrew, the yes and, like it's not an either or between the two. Because I'll tell you, as somebody who had a child at 10 months of employment, I was not FMLA eligible. Thank you for not firing me, city, at the time. But I think that idea of like protecting those for new employees, especially as we're looking to hire, and I'm looking at your average age and we're looking to hire more people and have our workforce, I think showing this as a benefit is going to show that we are an organization that does want to keep our existing workforce as well as recruit for others. And that was just something that was important to me. Any other questions or feedback?
Thank you for putting it together.
So I want to clarify, just so I know what we're looking at. I heard looking at intermittent and continuous. I heard 10 weeks. Are there any other number-related things that you would like us to look at, like, 8 weeks or, 100% pay for 10 weeks, that type of thing? Because that will help us run scenarios.
I think it is useful for having the 100% just to have that knowledge. It helps to show those dollar amounts.
10 weeks and intermittent and continuous. Did I miss anything?
Fully paid versus 75%.
That would be 100%, right?
That I missed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So we've asked departments to look at their budgets. Some of these are amendments that will be being presented to you for vote later as we adopt the budget. But we wanted to go ahead and just give you kind of where we stand today on some of the amendments that departments have requested since we presented the proposed budget to you.
A fair amount of these amendments are things that were budgeted for 23, but need to be rolled over to 24.
And to clarify with this one, as we look at this, we have an amendment sheet that is dated August 7th, but based on the discussion I heard earlier, that's still potentially changing, and so this is not an amendment sheet we need to vote on, because it might still change. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
This is a no vote.
Thank you.
So are you going to go through these current amendments, or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So these are just the totals on the first two pages. And then we'll get into a little bit of a description of each one. So the first one was what I just explained, 23 expense that needs to be moved over to 24. That's for creative services, around 300,000. The second is from the airport, around 30,000. Additional revenue for a ground lease agreement with airline maintenance service. 3 is Parks and Rec.
It was a correction from the budget from an NDI that was left out of the original proposed budget. So it was an increase to budget for equipment parts based on actual usage currently.
And if anyone is looking, all of this information is in the amendment sheet that was attached to the agenda tonight.
That's correct.
Yes.
4 is around 10,000 for a safety vehicle that needs some repair. This is again a 23 expense moving to 24. 5 is a CVB transfer to cover principal and interest amount of the bonds for the airport. This should have been increased in this fiscal year. It was just something that was missed by myself.
Number 6 is a solid waste expense that was accidentally removed during the core budget process. That would have been early on in the whole budget process back in probably March. That was just missed. Number 7 is the revenue forecast for health has been increased a a little bit. And then number 8 are, and I don't know what the
These are-
DLC is.
Yeah, I couldn't
It's a
tell you.
grant.
Public health grant, expenditures for that public health grant. 9, this is $14,000, for game day shuttles, for CVB. And then, the revenue going to transit. Into parks, 181,000 FEMA funds received in '23 that won't be expensed until '24. 5,000 for public health and human services building expenses, and then 15,000 for increase related to council retreat. This is a $0 expense amendment for Parks and Rec. Do you know exactly what that was for?
It's just moving the money from one project to another capital improvement project due to playground vandalism. Gabe may be able to explain more on this, but it is part of the capital improvement project.
Gabe Huffington, Parks and Recreation Director. We had originally had $250,000 in the Water Small Wildlife Project. Unfortunately, we had some vandalism occur at West Winds Park. That project was not going to take place until FY25. Because the playground damage and what was there, we went ahead and are going to move that funding forward to 24 so that we can go ahead and replace the entire playground instead of just replace the slides and some other components. So saves us a little bit of money in terms of just the operating budget and the repairs now, and we'll just go ahead and do that project instead. So just moving it up because of an unfortunate incident.
Then we had an increase in property tax revenue. This was just due to us receiving the assessments and the performer information a little later. And we had a decrease in business license revenue. This was a oversight, as we had, the prediction didn't follow through from our forecast to the actual budget, and we had a number in there that was wrong. The next is around 400,000 for the comprehensive plan update, the transportation plan, and this is just moving it from 23 to 24 when the money will actually be expensed. And then increase to revenue of about $1.2 million. This was a increase in use tax revenue.
It's
that we
coming in
didn't
higher
foresee.
than we expected.
Yeah. So we had budgeted in at about 10% of sales tax, and it's coming in more like 12%.
And Matthew, clarifying question on number 16, and this might be for Tim. Is this, is that 396, wait, okay, there it was. Is that to cover, because we're scheduled to do the comprehensive plan update next, is this scheduled for that?
Combination is the comp plan and the Metro Transportation. Tim Teddy, Community Development Director, and the priority as far as timing goes would be the Metropolitan Transportation Plan because that has a deadline, and that's the known as the CATSO Long-Range Transportation Plan. Traditionally, the federal rules have changed the name to Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Okay, all right. And then the comp plan is this is not a complete overhaul of Columbia Imagined, but an update, or is it a complete process?
It would be, I'd call it a major update. I think we're keeping the identity as Columbia Imagined because people are pretty used to that name.
And is this budget amount cover, those are two major plans that require a lot of community engagement and with your staffing levels, I assume outside
Yeah, and there's some
consultants?
federal in both of those, particularly in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, but also in the comp plan, because we have a land use activity that's considered part of transportation. So there'll be some offset at the local.
In addition to the 396 local?
Well, it includes, a portion of that is federal in origin, so it's coming out of a formula grant, not necessarily.
Okay. Thank you.
So the last slide that we have was just to go over the dates of future public hearings, that we do have 2 additional hearings for the public, the 21st and then September 5th. And then we will finalize the budget adoption on September 18th. We're just asking that if the city council has a amendment that they would like to propose, that we know what the item requested is, how much, and then if there's any thoughts on where we might allocate that money from. The rest of the slides are just discussion, if there's anything else the council would like to discuss on the budget before we move into the public hearings.
Betsy has a question.
Yeah, if you go back one slide, and I mainly need to have my memory refreshed, it seems like we need to have all of our amendments in by August 21st. Is that true, so that, so the public knows and we know what the amendments are we're discussing?
That's correct.
So that on Tuesday, September 5th, we can have any robust discussion we need to on the amendments. So we generally don't do new amendments on the
18th.
On the 5th of September, and we don't do any on the 18th, generally speaking, because we're approving that budget. So we really need to have our any amendments we want in on August 21st.
That would be, ideally, there may, it's September 5th where we have another public hearing, there may be items that you may want to look at as doing them as an amendment to, and so we can bring an amendment sheet on the 18th as well. But ideally, hopefully we can have everything done by the 5th. But it does give us an extra meeting. But what we don't want to do is have an amendment after the 18th.
Okay. But generally speaking, if we make an amendment, we want to have it.
I'm closer to the microphone.
So, but generally speaking, if we want to have an amendment, we want to have it, we want the public to be able to comment on that.
Correct.
So if we make an amendment on the 18th, we can't do that.
Is
that not correct?
I see what you mean. Basically, because we would make our comments after the public hearing, because there is still a public hearing, there's still public comment
Correct.
on the 18th.
Correct.
So, if you are bringing something up, doing it during council conversation just like this, before we open up for public comment. So even though there's no official public hearing, because we will have had 3, there is still public comment on the 18th of September.
Okay.
So when you approve the budget on the 18th, you will have a vote and you will allow for public comments on the 18th. So that will allow you to have another amendment sheet on the 18th if necessary.
Okay.
So now time for our kind of questions before we open the public hearing. The last item of the comprehensive plan reminded me that the Climate Action Adaptation Plan, when adopted in 19, talked about in 5 years doing an update.
Mm-hmm.
So will we expect to see an amendment that brings in any, if there's any cost associated with that?
Yeah, talk to Eric about it, so there will be an amendment for it. Eric, you can come on up.
You don't have to. Give him an out.
Pretty short answer, but yes, that was an oversight on my part. I got my fiscal and calendar years a little inverted, so we'll be bringing forth an amendment for the cap revisiting.
Okay.
Yeah. Just doing some research to get a better idea of scope and potential cost before I bring the amendment.
Thank you. Sorry, that's just one that I really know. All right, so for these discussions, is this something that you're needing feedback on, or what are the slides? I don't know what the slides are coming forward.
This is purely your discussion.
Okay.
So
This is just, I thought there were more slides for discussion.
There are slides at the
They-
back of this for just additional information that we were not gonna, really review, but they'll be in the document, in the minutes.
Any council comments before I open this up for our first public hearing? Andrea?
I thought of this, Kathy, while you sat down. Currently, as it's written, FMLA, if both employees work for the city, they split that FMLA time. Do we know if this potential proposal would remedy that? I would appreciate that, because that is something that's been brought up in discussions that I've had with folks, is if both people work here, often the woman gets penalized and has to take all of her time, and the sick leave ends up being retained by the spouse. Yes, please. I'm kind of conflating two things there, but I think that they're similar.
Yeah, and so I wanted to clarify, because the way our current ordinance is written for sick leave, it does not matter what your gender is. You can use up to 240 hours of sick leave for the birth or placement of a child. But you are correct about the federal law says if you both work for the same employer, you split the bonding time. So if, give an example, if the mom has a regular birth without any complications or C-section, normally you would expect 6 weeks of sick leave for the recovery from the birth, and then they would have 6 weeks to bond with the child. And the father, if he works for the city, he would only get 6 weeks to bond with the child, because they're limited to 12 weeks combined for that, just for everybody's information.
And if she needed to recuperate longer, she'd have to use her sick time and...
Right, so normally if you have no complications, you expect 6 weeks of sick leave to recover. If it's whatever a normal C-section is, you would generally expect an 8-week recovery period, and then they would have 4 weeks to bond. And the other parent, if they worked for the city, would have 8 weeks for that combined 12 weeks of bonding. So, but I know it was two things, but I wanted to clarify, we do allow both parents to use up to 240 hours of sick leave, and it can be more if there are complications or a medical condition involved. Did that?
It did. I just wanted to make sure that if we're building a policy off of this and we're using FMLA as the basis by which we determine whether or not you get to take that time, that we are paying attention to being equitable about who gets to take that time. And if we want to recruit and retain employees, I think it's not a great idea to say, yes, you can take your time, but you have to split it with your partner. I don't think that achieves the spirit of what I was hoping to achieve. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Nick Foster.
I appreciated the slide that compared us to other municipalities in, for sick leave. That was helpful. What I'm wondering, though, is if we've taken a look at where we are locally, and by that I mean we're competing not only with municipalities, we're competing with other employers in the city and beyond. So I just wonder about that and how much that's been taken in consideration, not just in this regard, not just in terms of sick leave, but in everything related to our pay and our pay structure and benefits. There she is, sorry. That seems like a big deal to me as it comes out of my mouth.
It is. So these are the public sector comparators that we received information from as part of the class and comp study. And so public sector, we're required to give this information because we're subject to Freedom of Information Act request. The private industry, they will not provide that information to you because they don't have to. And so what our consultant used for wages is Economic Research Institute is where they get the private sector data, and it's aggregated. So you don't get to find out that employer A does this, employer B does this, but you can break it down by geographic area, by industry. You can actually look at summary job descriptions so that you know you're comparing apples to apples. So that's where we get our private sector data from, is from the Economic Research Institute.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Pretty much.
I would also add to that, it'd be interesting to know if any of them also have a different policy for for paid family leave of these ones that we have comparisons to. I think it was St. Louis County that we talked about had one, and so it'd be interesting to see, in addition, what is their sick leave comparison.
So I can ask staff to follow up, because obviously Siegel's done with their work, but we
Right.
can certainly ask staff to reach out to these particular entities and see if they have a paid family leave
Be great.
policy.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff before I open up the public hearing? All right, this is one of the ones where I get to bang the gavel. I'm now going to open up the public hearing. We have a few speakers for boards and commissions, and I'll ask for them to come up forward. At the beginning of every budget year, we usually invite the commissions that have budgetary impacts here. So I'd first like to ask Tom Rose with the Housing and Community Development Commission to please come up and speak. After Tom will be Stacy Ford with the Human Services Commission, David Spear with the Commission on Cultural Affairs, and Jacqueline Sample with the Disabilities Commission.
Thank you. My name's Tom Rose. I'm Chair of the Housing and Community Development Commission, and we have presented our recommendations for funding for the CDBG and home funding. On behalf of the City of Columbia Housing and Community Development Commission, I request your support of the Housing and Community Development Commission's Fiscal Year 2024 Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Program funding recommendations. Funding recommendations were unanimously approved by the Commission on June 14th, 2023. Fiscal year 2024 is the fifth year of the city's 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan. The Housing and Community Development Commission played a key role in thorough public input and planning process in determining the five-year funding priorities. The city's consolidated planning process included feedback from the Neighborhood Congress event, 5 community forums, 4 public hearings, the Fair Housing Task Force, a robust data analysis, and a citizen survey. This input was used to develop goals for the 2020 to 24 consolidated plan. These goals also guided the decision-making process for fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 24 Housing Community Development Commission funding recommendations are based on ratings of each individual application, review of updated annual survey data, public input, as well as a review of the goals in the city's 2020 to 24 consolidated plan. The Housing Community Development Commission public hearings involve thorough deliberation between commissioners, the public, and agencies requesting funds. In addition, the Housing Community Development Commission reviewed and has recommended reallocating CDBG funds for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. The recommendations were also unanimously approved. Once council approves these reallocations, city staff will amend the fiscal year 21 and 22 annual action plans with HUD. Please consider supporting the Commission's fiscal year 2024 CDBG and home funding recommendations as submitted, as well as the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 reallocation recommendations. We got that. I attended the meeting, so thank you, and I certainly can take any questions that you might have. It's to remember that the Commission has limited funds to try to allocate. We certainly get many more requests that we have funds for, and I think our priorities are to just try to figure out where we can make the greatest impact.
For the chair? No.
All right.
Appreciate your dedication and service. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Next, like to ask for Stacy Ford. Stacy to come forward.
Hi, I am Stacy Ford. I am the Chair of the Human Service Commission. This evening, I would like to speak on behalf of our commission in support of the city's long-standing investment in our community's social infrastructure through the social service funding process that we have. The Human Service Commission and the Department of Public Health and Human Services are charged with making annual recommendations for the purchase of social services through professional service agreements with community-based providers utilizing the city's social service funding. The goal of the city's purchase of social services is to ensure our basic needs are met, and we all have the opportunity to achieve our full potential as citizens of Columbia. Detailed information about the social services funding process and the issues we address were provided in our report to the council, which I believe was included as an attachment to the budget document. The Human Service Commission has asked for social service funding to be restored or increased in each budget since the funding was cut in 2010. After an increase in this year's budget, we were very pleased to see that the city's manager proposed budget again includes an increase in social service funding. This is another step in the right direction. The members of the Human Service Commission would like to thank the City Council for its long-standing support of the city's investment in social infrastructure of our community. We look forward to presenting our 2024 social service contract recommendations to you in December. We are currently in basic needs proposals, so that's what we will be presenting for you. Thank you.
Oh, do you have a question for the chair?
Not really, but I wanted to thank you for your service in this area and for following this. I just wanted to point out that this graph is what I was referring to a little while ago about the amounts directed towards social services funding adjusted for inflation, and you can see a drop off there, but a significant uptick both in the adjusted for inflation and in the totals in the new year. So I would like for us to just be sure we're keeping an eye on this and that we will see that continuing to move up. When we're addressing issues like community violence and poverty and so many other things, what we're doing here is critical. And so I'm just glad to see the investments, glad to see the clarity in the report, so appreciate that.
That's one of our goals, is to make sure that we are tracking what our input into the community, what gains we get from that over the time. And I will Hollis, who keeps us on track, and he really does work diligently in the community to make sure that we are addressing issues that aren't just kind of seen on the news, but the actual issues of the community as needed. He puts a lot of time and effort into bringing in other organizations and trying to work as a group to do that.
Thank you, Stacy. Now I'd like to invite David Spear with the Commission on Cultural Affairs to please come up to the podium. Should have brought your picture.
Hello, my name is David Spear. I'm the chair of the City Commission on Cultural Affairs. I live at 2607 Burwood in Columbia. With this report, I present the Commission's work on the city's annual arts and cultural funding process for fiscal year 2024. The basic guidelines of the arts funding program are applicants must be an arts or cultural organization with a 501c3 nonprofit status. The maximum request is $7,500, not to exceed 25% of the organization's last fiscal year total revenue. Funds are used to assist with local exhibitions, performances, workshops, classes, and special events. As you know, these awards are annually contracts for services for the city. The Commission held a public meeting in June to review 27 applications. In advance of that meeting, commissioners individually read and scored all the applications. Staff compiled all comments and scores, which were shared with all commissioners. Our June meeting then focused on discussing each application and any responses and finalizing the scores. Applications were scored according to set criteria: artistic quality, educational value, community outreach, and administrative ability, including diversity of revenue sources. The Commission held a public hearing in July to get feedback from applicants and individuals. The Office of Cultural Affairs received 27 applications requesting just over $184,000 for arts and cultural projects. In FY24, depending upon council approval of the budget, we will distribute $100,000 in city funds towards these projects, as well as an additional $3,000 in small request projects. In addition, this year we will augment city funds with $16,500 from the Columbia Arts Fund, bringing the total of annual funding distributions to $116,500 plus the $3,000 in small request funding. The impact of these funds is crucial to the operation of these organizations that do so much to improve the quality of life within our community. Many studies have determined that the arts are a sound investment for increasing tourism, engaging economic activity, contributing to a livable community, enhancing education, and improving public safety. City funding encourages all of this and is truly about providing greater access to arts and cultural activities for our community. We estimate more than 180,000 residents and visitors will participate in city-funded arts activities and events in the upcoming fiscal year, making the city's investment a little more than 64 cents per participant. In closing, please know that the Commission commends and thanks the City Council for recognizing the importance of actively supporting the arts in Columbia. We hope that the Council will consider future increases to the core amount of the city arts funding, and that you share our enthusiasm for the range of cultural and arts-related opportunities the recommended projects will present to the Columbia's residents and visitors. Arts are not just important, they are necessary. Thank you.
David, any questions for David? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to request Jacqueline Sample to please come up from the Disabilities Commission.
Hello, Jackie Sample, Chair of Disabilities Commission. This last fiscal year was the first year our commission actually had a budget, so thank you for that. We had a wonderful opportunity to send several of our commissioners to the National ADA Symposium. Because of the close proximity in Kansas City, we were able to send more than what we had originally planned on, which was 2, and I think we sent 3 and then subsidized trips for 2 others. So it was a majority of our commission members were able to attend, so it was really fantastic. So looking ahead to this next year, in addition to that $10,000 budget that is currently in the plan, we're asking for you to consider some additional budget items that may not necessarily be within the purview of the Disabilities Commission, but just recommendations as we continue to work with the city on ADA accessibility. First, we are, very thrilled that we now have a DEI officer with the city. And we are asking that there are some budget money put aside for that person to complete the ADA coordinator training program. This can be done online. The cost is $300. And there's some additional no to low cost online trainings available. So it's a very small financial responsibility, and it's really great training for that person. We also would request the council consider funding to send the DEI officer to the National ADA Symposium every year, so that person can meet with other city leaders on how to best support ADA services for our city. Additionally, we would request funding to send at least one other city staff member or director or officer to the National ADA Symposium, so there can be a rotation through city departments, so we can have IT personnel go, we can have public works personnel go, we can have parks and rec people go. When you go to the ADA Symposium, you will see all of those people. I've met several mayors, actually, at the ADA Symposium when I was in Dallas a couple of years ago. So you see city managers, you see every city position you can see, those people are at these ADA Symposiums gathering information. So we would like not only the DEI officer to go, but also one additional person to kind of rotate through. And then lastly, the commission is requesting that you consider funding for part or full-time ADA coordinator, or perhaps more immediately to cover financial costs needed to provide protected time for the current ADA coordinator, to make sure that the advisory recommendations that are coming from our commission can be completed in a timely manner. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions for Jackie? Nick Foster.
Jackie, I'm really glad that a number of your folks were able to go to the symposium, and I'm wondering a couple of things. One, did we also have city staff at all to attend?
Yes, I do believe at least 2. I want to say somebody from engineering.
Yeah, in Public Works, we had 2 people attend.
Okay, I remember that being part of the conversation,
Yes.
but have we heard back a report from you about your experience there and what you might have learned, brought back that we can apply?
We have not. We're meeting on Thursday, and that can be part of our meeting. We have had our individual commissioners present at our commission meeting about about ideas or things that they brought back. And this last month, I've looked into, kind of dug into the information that they brought back to see what follow-up we needed to do. But we can absolutely.
I just think it might be helpful for us to hear that
Yeah.
in response to the funding that's there.
I agree.
And then the other question I have is, you have requests here. Do those, what happens with
Are they
those
included
requests
in
at
the
this point?
proposed budget, or are you requesting that they be added to the budget?
They are not currently included.
So that would be a request then for amendment.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jackie? No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's the end of the scheduled public for boards and commissions, correct, Sheila? I don't think there's anyone else I had on my list for things to come.
Yeah,
So now-
those are the ones we were aware of in advance.
Okay.
Yeah, there could be others.
Okay. So now the public hearing is still open. So if anyone from the public wish to speak on items for the budget, reminder, this is the first of 3 public hearings, and then there will also be public comment at the September 18th meeting.
Christian, Second Ward. First of all, I would like to thank the city for providing 3 copies of the budget to the library. I know at least one day, all 3 copies were out for several hours because people are actually asking for them and reading them. Now, I am actually one of the people who has used it at the library, and I've gotten through about a third of it, and I have some very specific comments and questions. According to the police department, they are asking for $2.3 million for Molly Bowden, $7 million to renovate the downtown building, $12 million to build a new south building, and $1.5 million for evidence storage. That's $22.8 million just for buildings. I don't think we actually need all of that, especially when the Molly Bowden building, it's not been actually utilized. I've been in it. It's locked. You can't get in it. It's not actually being used. We were promised it'd be for a community center, but it's not. Also, they said that the evidence storage was because that they were using other city space, and they would have to soon give that back or some such. And that was with the $1.5 million. I would ask if the city's policy for work from home is actually being utilized at a good rate, because studies have shown that work from home actually is more productive, and it has people liking their job better, and that could save $1.5 million. For the fire department, on page 394, there is a quint that costs $50,000 more than all the other quints, and I've just got a question as to why. And then there is a part of the police budget that says that they want $20,000 to take people on a vacation to the Civil Rights Museum for a community empowerment trip. It works out to about $200 per person. They're asking for to take more people this year. It said in fiscal year 24, the correspondence team, or the team employee training and community empowerment trip to Memphis will contribute to enhancing neighborhood safety in the city. A trip to the museum's is not helping enhance neighborhood safety. What would actually help enhance neighborhood safety is having our police department to actually treat our community members like human beings. Thank you.
Chris.
I'm Anthony Willroth, downtown business owner. I'd also like to introduce myself to you guys in a couple of new roles that I'm filling right now. It's the Vice President of Race Matters Friends and Secretary of the North Central Neighborhood Association. I don't need the 5 minutes. I just say this because I feel like a lot of times I come up here and I don't always walk away feeling that you guys value my opinion, but there is a lot of times that my peers, and in a lot of cases your peers, do find value in my voice. So just want to throw that out there. The 2 things I'd like to get to about the budget are that the 25% increase in social services sounds nice on its surface. That's great. We always need more money there. But when Nick Foster asked about what that 25% actually represents, it was essentially an extension in hours of services of 2 services that we already run. And that shows you how paltry the sum that we currently put towards social services truly is. My friend Susan Mays always loves to talk about how she puts 3% of her personal income towards helping the homeless, and she always says that the city should be putting 3% of the general fund towards the same thing. I wholeheartedly agree, and to sit here and ask a very salient question about what that 25% represents and then follow up like that's somehow satisfactory, and if we just keep doing that, things are going to get better, to me is a little bit insulting and just pays lip service, Mr. Foster. The other thing on the budget is that there's a proposition for the police to have a system that automatically generates reports from transcribing audio from the body-worn camera. That sounds great in theory, but I can tell you in practice that's going to be an awful lot of nonsense, because one of my roles in this community is as an advocate. Lots of people that feel that they've been wronged by the police contact me. They show me details from their case. That frequently includes body-worn camera footage. And I can tell you that in any given case, I can count at least a dozen violations of body camera policy. Whether it's the officers intentionally not turning their camera audio back on, forgetting to turn their camera audio back on, or if you can actually sit there and watch where they push their hands in front of there like they're pressing the button to turn it on, and it either doesn't work or they've gotten it flipped back and forth in their mind whether the audio is off and on. And our body camera policy says that when they're talking with the public, that needs to be on. And again, dozens of examples in any one single given case. So in my mind, until we can get a situation where the police department is actually following the current body-worn camera policy, what benefit would it be for us to throw a system to transcribe that useless and incomplete data?
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Tanya Heath, 4th Ward, and I went to the South Side presentation from the police department, and the 3 key takeaways that we came away from that night was that the public calls the police 400 calls a day on average, and that fentanyl is the #1, drug that is causing a lot of problems in Columbia, and that for our population, that while we're working on nonprofits, improving the quality of life for everyone in Columbia, right now, the police are not at current staff. And so there's 120,000 people that, 400 calls a day. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the fiscal year 24 proposed budget?
Good evening. I'm Jack Meisenbach. I live out at Old Hawthorne. Regarding the budget, I am sorry I didn't really get to look at it in any detail other than what you showed us tonight. But my question is kind of at the 20,000 foot level. How much money, or what percentage of the $500 million budget is allocated to advance renewables and achieve 100% by 2030? 1%? 10? 0? I'm hoping that when we do the Climate and Environmental Commission report, that they're going to go research this throughout all of the boards and commissions and identify all the items related to achieving renewable energy 100%. And I will bet anybody tonight, any amount of money you want to bet, that you're not going to find much, if anything. When I attend the water and light meetings pretty regularly for the last 2 years, and I can tell you, that topic does not come up on the agenda unless Carolyn is there, or Jim, or Jay, or me. We bring it up in the after session. What about renewable energy? I know you guys are earnest about doing this, but frankly, that commission is not doing your bidding. They're not working for you. And the thing about their rate increase related to this budget, that was appalling 2 weeks ago. I mean, you guys were totally blindsided. They reported on a study that basically did not fulfill the goals and wishes of the council. Has nothing to do with advancing renewable energy, nothing. So my experience in work life, if I have a board or a commission that does not do my bidding and does not support the strategic goals of the organization, I get rid of it. To me, you ought to just let the water and light management run that, because that commission is not doing your bidding. But I really look forward to finding out how much is in this budget to advance renewable energy. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the fiscal year 24 proposed budget?
Good evening. I'm Bob Hutton, 2252 Country Lane, and I'm chair of the Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and I'm here to speak in favor of the funding recommendation of the Housing and Community Development Commission, who have generously allocated us a fair amount of money. The use of this money is for the remodeling, and it's not really remodeling because it's demolition and total rebuild of what we call a certain segment of our housing authority stock called Providence Walkway, which is essentially right beside the building on Switzler, just south of it, and it includes the Blind Boone Center. So it's the area from Blind Boone over to Switzler Street. There's 52 units. They will be totally torn down and rebuilt and provide affordable housing for a large number of people for the future. The good news of the allocation of this money is that we can hopefully take the roughly $470,000 that is being recommended and parlay that into about $11 million of state and federal tax credit money. So, urge you to support that, and thank you for your support in the past and the future.
Bob. Would anybody else from the public wish to speak on the fiscal year 24 proposed budget, knowing this is the first of multiple opportunities to speak? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Questions from council? Are there any council comments going forward? I think I had one. I'd be interested in seeing the proposal request from the Disabilities Commission for additional attendance, whether or not there's in the capacity of staff. Obviously, this is a DeCarlin decision on what his staff goes to or attends, but what that fiscal impact might be for the additional attendance for that. And then clarification, our ADA coordinator, that's Adam, right? So he's also one of our city attorneys. And I don't know if we've explored whether or not to have an additional staff member to assist with any of these things, because I imagine he's probably busy in the prosecutor's office.
Yes, we don't have the capacity in the law department, but there have been examinations from time to time about whether or not that moves to another department. It came to the law department, probably about 2015 or so, out of the city manager's office, so.
Okay.
When Tony St. Marie passed that baton. And I will add that the ADA conference, or the ADA symposium is, if it's attended by other departments, it's paid out of their department budget. So like we cover the cost of Adam Cruz to go out of the law department. It's just the budget for the board and commission only covers the board and commission members who attend. So
okay,
those are actually embedded in those departments' budgets.
It might be more of the intent of within the city manager's budget that travel might include, or potentially an amendment to if the DEI officer were to go.
Well, correct. So like, yeah, exactly. Yes.
Any other council comments? We'll obviously continue this discussion at our next meeting. We have up, just as a reminder, we'll continue this public hearing as well, so there will be no votes tonight. The amendment sheet will be updated before what we see happening on that piece. For, I think, moving on, Sheila, moving on, right? All right. Sheila, will you please read Bill 15723?
Council Bill 15723 is an ordinance amending Chapter 17 of the City Code as it relates to parks and recreation fees and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
Do we have a staff report? I think I should notice this is under our public hearings because it is related to the budget document.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. And so that's why we technically read it together.
Thank you, Mayor. Gabe Huffington, Parks and Recreation Director. We are requesting legislation to amend Chapter 17 of the City Code that relates to the parks and recreation fees that we charge. We have 4 different fee increases that we're proposing as part of the FY 2024 budget. The first is to implement a $2 increase for our 18-hole round of golf. As an example, weekday rate is $22 currently. That would move to $24, and then a $1 increase for 9-hole green fees. Our green fees for 18 holes of golf were last increased in 2019. And then our 9-hole was increased in 2016. This increase to the green fee will adjust all of our annual pass rates as well. We base it off of 40 rounds of golf, and then we add in that increase, and that's how we adjust all of those different rates. As you look through that supplemental document, you'll see a lot of different changes to those golf fees, and that all just ties together to that $2 and $1 increase. We also would like to set the indoor facility rental rates for the Northeast Event Center at Northeast Regional Park. This is formerly Boone County Fairgrounds. We rent that large building to the public from January through September. Right now we use a promotional rate. This will set those rates within our ordinance for what we charge the public to rent that facility. We are proposing a 25-cent increase for daily admission to the Ark, and then to increase memberships accordingly as well. Our daily fees were last increased in October of 22 or last year. Our membership types have not increased since October of 2016. One change that we will make along with this increase is to take our specialty classes and now move those to be included with our memberships and daily admissions. So in the past, there was an additional fee for specialty classes such as yoga and spin. That's now included. And this is a model that a lot of other fitness-related centers in our area use. We obviously also have gym space and the water zone, but for our fitness folks that are members, this is something that we'll include as part of those class schedules to be more competitive in the market. And then lastly, we'd like to implement a $0 to $100 rental range for our garden plots at Fairview Park. We now expanded that. We have some $25 small garden plots, and we have $40 large garden plots. We've added water, and so that rate range allows us to adjust that accordingly if our water prices were to go up greatly. But that $40 large plot, $25 small plot, I don't anticipate it to change, but this does allow us to make that change if needed. The proposed changes to the fee ordinance for Parks and Recreation generate approximately $190,000 per year for us. Those fee increases help us offset a lot of costs that we're incurring due to labor, such as the minimum wage going up to $12 per hour. We've seen some steady increases in materials and supplies. Our fuel costs have gone up, but then also utility expenses. Fees, this is a question that was asked about implemented at different times of the year. ARC daily fees would be part of the FY 2024 budget, so that would occur October 2nd. ARC annual pass, we're required to give a 60-day notice, so that would not go in effect until December 1st. Golf fees would be November 1st. That's the start of our winter rates. So kind of when we transition from the number of golfers we have right now into our winter rates, that's when we would start to make that change. And then garden plot rentals start on January 1st, and so that's our first day of reservations. So we are requesting approval of the legislation amending Chapter 17 of the City Code as it relates to Parks and Rec fees. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Council of Parks and Recreation? And this is just the clarification that we can vote on this tonight, or we can do it with our budget. I will go ahead and open up for public comment, public hearing, and then we can call for vote after this unless there's any hesitation or concerns we have. All right, you said this is a public hearing? All right, I get to bang the gavel. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on amending Chapter 17 related to Parks and Recreation fees?
Anthony Wilroth, the downtown business owner. I'll keep this super brief, and I'll just say that I support raising the fees for golf, and we should honestly raise them even higher, if not double them, and use them to subsidize more equitable uses of our land, parks, and recreation. Golfers across the United States are 72% male, 72% white, with the average salary of $51,672. So I think they can afford $24 to play golf or something like that, as it says there. They can afford a lot more than that. They can afford, again, double it and use that to subsidize things that the rest of the community might actually be able to use. Think about that one.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on amending Chapter 17 related to parks and recreation fees? Great, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on this one. Any additional council comments? Sheila, do you want to go ahead and call roll on B 15723?
Council Bill 15723, Mr. Canoth?
Yes.
Ms. Swainer?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo?
Yes. All right, moving on. Sheila, will you please read public hearing 2923?
Public hearing 2923 is the proposed construction of renovations and improvements to the Ashley Street Center located at 1509 Ashley Street.
Do we have a staff report?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Shane Creech, and I'm the Public Works Director. This project would renovate the existing Ashley Street Center to add up to 6 showers and bathrooms and 6 sets of washers and dryers. Public Works is proposing to do this project as a design-build project, which allows us some flexibility in the final scope of the project based on input from current and proposed tenants. The project also includes renovations to the existing commercial kitchen to meet current code requirements. Final design may include the addition of preparation and/or storage areas to meet the needs of tenants. Other proposed improvements include infrastructure improvements to facilitate the additional utility needs of the facility, exploring the installation of permanent hookups for the city's portable shower trailer, and the removal of an existing stage. Staff held an interested parties meeting on July 25th, 2023. The estimated total project cost is $453,000, but the final scope will determine the actual cost. Funding for the project is coming from previously allocated general fund revenue. Staff is requesting to complete this project as a design-build project. Anticipated benefits include speed and flexibility. One major criteria used in determining the team which will be awarded the contract is their estimated schedule. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council of staff? Betsy?
One question is, who is anticipated to use this facility, and do we have contracts with folks, or, there's been discussion, but who is actually going to be using this?
Sure. Early on, we spoke to several entities that we believed would have some interest. Turning Point, Loaves and Fishes, Room at the Inn were the 3 that I spoke to the most. That's kind of how we built the preliminary scope. I'm not aware of any contracts in place other than Room at the Inn, but maybe someone else could speak to that better than I can.
No, that's it. The only group that we actually have a contract with for the use of the building is Room at the Inn.
Okay.
And the one thing that I do want to make a note is that the scope may change based off the tenants. And so let's say that we've had discussions with Turning Point. If Turning Point decides not to locate there, then there may not be a need to put in 6 showers and 6 washer and dryer units.
Okay. So then my follow-up question is timing. Because I anticipate Room at the Inn is planning to open the 1st of November.
Yes.
And so what of this design-build project will we have done? Or, now, Room at the Inn used the Ashley Street Center the way it was last year, so there's not an emergency to have to change things just for them, but, do we have a plan to sort of address those issues?
Sure. The contract will require the design-build team to work around the existing tenant that we have. We're blessed in a way for how Room at the Inn uses the facility. For the most part, during the days, they're not in there. So as far as construction noise, things like that, we can mitigate that somewhat just based on how they use the facility. As far as timing is concerned, we hope to have, if it's approved tonight, we'll get it out on the street. And we got about 30 days roughly where it needs to be out there. And then we have to evaluate what comes back and interview teams. So you're looking at a couple months before you'd have somebody on board, I'd say. And then from there, design build gives us that flexibility to kind of go in and immediately do some demo while they're designing what goes in there. We can also move around what comes first. If we have a tenant that has interest in the kitchen, let's say, well, then we need to prioritize that over some of the work that involves washers and dryers and showers. My big goal was to make sure we had the infrastructure in place to be able to do that. Whether we need I want that infrastructure in place so that as the needs change in the facility, we can add washers and dryers, add an additional shower, those kind of things. Right now, I can't do all of those things because I just don't have water, sewer, electric where I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Nick.
And this may be a question, I don't know if Steve Hollis or whomever is handling the, engaging with partners part of this. Can you share where we're at in terms of discussions with like Turning Point or Loaves and Fishes? I know you said we only have a contract currently with Room at the Inn, but I know that's not the only one that we'd like to see engage with us in this process.
Steve Hollis again, Human Services Manager for the city. Right now, the only group that we know for sure is going to be moving in this winter is Room at the Inn. That license is good through the end of December. The contract amendment that I mentioned earlier is what we'd be bringing back to you, and I assume that will involve a new license on the space. At this point, it is looking likely that Turning Point may not move into Ashley Street Center. They brought up some really legitimate concerns that we discussed in a long meeting a couple weeks ago and that we've shared with city leadership. I definitely an eye, though, for them moving to the Opportunity Campus. And then certainly talking a lot to Loaves and Fishes, which is a program of the St. Francis community. Have some things to work on there. They're not actually an incorporated entity. It's just a group of volunteers. So working with them on trying to prep them to be incorporated so it'd be easier for us to enter a license agreement to use the space. So those are the two groups that we've been speaking to the most lately. In addition to Turning Point, I would say at this time right now, I think Turning Point's a no-go on Ashley Street Center with their focus on getting ready for the Opportunity Campus.
Thank you for that update. Follow-up question for you, and not to go too far down a tangent here. Can you share at all what the concerns were from Turning Point as to why they just don't think this is a good fit?
So well, just as a quick note, right now we're talking about the physical improvements to this space, and so I just want to make sure we don't get too far down something that we don't know all the answers to just yet.
And I want to be a little careful not to speak for an outside, entity. I'll just say generally a couple major issues. One is frankly just the idea of moving that operation twice. They have mail service there. It would be really disruptive for all the mail service operations. It's a huge important service they provide to the community. The other big one is that it is really the mission of that church at this point, and the church is concerned if that mission goes away, it may heavily impact the church, which as I understand it is being helped by the larger Methodist church. And then the third reason is if they move, we will not have a place for our overnight warming center, because that service by its very nature needs to be separate from the Room at the Inn. So that's a huge issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, Nick Foster.
Shane, I'm just curious about restrooms. I see in the green that's where showers and washer and dryers would go. Does this plan increase the number of restrooms in the building?
Yes.
Can you just point that out to me?
Sure. On this slide, far left side, what we've got shown is 4 ADA accessible showers, toilets, and sinks. It wouldn't necessarily have to be 4 like that. It could be 2 ADA accessible and 3 other showers. Again, a lot of that's on there based on some feedback we got from Turning Point. That doesn't mean that showers wouldn't be something that would be of benefit to any other tenant that might use the facility.
These other restrooms that are here in more of the central part of the building or closer to the central part of the building, those are all pre-existing?
Those are all the existing ones, yes, sir.
Okay. I would just say, I would imagine, but again, a good conversation at least with Ratty about whether or not, if we don't put in all the showers and so forth, what they might be able to make use of in other, with other facilities like that, would be a good idea. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for staff before I open up the public hearing? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody from the public wishes to speak on Public Hearing 2923, proposed construction of renovations and improvements to the Ashley Street Center, please come up to the podium.
Anthony Wilroth, downtown business owner. I really didn't come here with the intention of taking up all your time tonight, but this is just crazy to me because in DeCarlin Seawood's State of the City address, he talked about all of these improvements as if it was already a done deal that it was going to happen. And now we're talking about voting on it tonight and that the timeline is going to be rushed. And I actually volunteered at Room at the Inn last winter, and I can tell you that facility is not really set to go through that for another winter. We made do, but none of the hoods or larger ranges or industrial commercial kitchen equipment in that kitchen works. The only thing that actually works in there is the sinks and an electric stove with 4 burners that takes about 45 minutes to boil a pot of water. There's no ability to hold food to a safe serving temperature once you've made it. And when we were serving upwards of 100 people there on the coldest nights of the year, I can tell you that with that 4 burner stove, we were probably serving some food under temp. That's not a great thing for the city. It's great to get food out there, but I mean, we're talking about the liability of like having a group in there like Turning Point that's not a registered group or something. Let's talk about the liability of if we're serving food to people, Nancy, in a facility that's not suited to serve safe food to people. Also, Mr. Seawood, in your State of the City address, you bragged about, and here at council many times, this portable shower truck that we've bought. And now I'm coming to find out from a lot of people that the portable shower truck is only going to be able to be used at the Ashley Street location because it needs to be plugged into like a fire hydrant or something, and there's concerns that that's the only suitable location to do it. So to me, the showers inside, while the shower truck that we've already bought can only work there, outside seems semi-redundant, but the whole thing, again, just insanity to me that this was spoken about at the State of the City address as if it was a done deal. This was happening this year. That was one of the biggest bragging points that our city manager had when he was telling us about the job he's done for the last year. And here we are tonight talking about if it's even going to happen. He says, I don't lie, I don't misrepresent. That's a very clear case of misrepresentation. I'd love to see an explanation from Mr. Seawood tonight about how that's not a misrepresentation.
Thank you, Anthony. Would anybody else from the public wish to speak on the proposed construction of renovations and improvements to the Ashley Street Center?
Eugene Elkin, 3406. I'm going to use ditto. The gentleman is speaking lots of truth. I have been one of those persons. I thought I was speaking truth. We're well under construction. It'll be ready by the fall. I was just going to town telling stories because my pastor, who is now left, was telling me this pertinent information. Who else could I trust? Why not believe what the preacher says? Now, it's coming out that we go to this meeting and all we do is stare at each other. What are we doing in this little room over here discussing something about a new shelter? Huh? This thing was supposed to be rolling, well underway, and I chose not to ask questions. Ain't that the right thing to do? If somebody takes on something, keep your mouth shut. This is not right. This truly is an injustice to our homeless. If I've been out here fighting for these people since '09, I do have a right to speak. And you all have been getting hit hard tonight. I am saying, please, and please comes from each and every one of those faces I've had to deal with all these years. For the other day, I got to look up and see that one success story. I know there's more. But where I found him in 2009, laying on the curb on South 9th, he was walking on the sidewalk. As I told, in 16, he appeared at church. No alcohol, no cigarettes, no drugs. He has a home. And by gosh, he takes care of his health. He goes and works out at the Ark. What can any one of you do to take care of the complaints you're hearing? Because, yes, I'm not God, but I have the right to speak. And to speak the wrong stuff, that hurts. That's not fair. Please come back and reevaluate what you're all doing. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on public hearing 2923 related to the proposed construction of renovations and improvements to Ashley Street Center?
Hello, everyone. I'm Debbie Graham, president of Room at the Inn, 4709 Winding Wood Court. I'm not here to complain. I'm here to say thank you. Last year was such a gift to us, and I heard someone use the word blessing. It was a blessing for Room at the Inn to have the Ashley Street Center, as imperfect as it is, for our guests to know that we will be here every night from the end of November when we opened last year till the 1st of April when we close this year. We have been known over the last 15 years for being able to make any site that we were blessed to be able to occupy work for our needs. Some are definitely better than others, but I think that I speak for our staff and our board that the Ashley Street Center has been a godsend for us as a working staff and a working board, and for volunteers and for our guests. I think the city did yeoman's work making that site as accessible as possible by rerouting a bus stop so that it enabled our guests to catch a city bus at Loaves and Fishes and then be let off at Ashley Street. We still augmented that with church vans and buses to make sure we picked up everyone. But for the most part, most of our guests accessed the city bus, which was another huge blessing for us. In terms of what we need in order to make Ashley Street work for us, we'd really like that stage removed, Shane. And a better oven. The stove we used last year that was referred to was actually donated to us by a church the year before when we spent 3 weeks at the event center at the fairgrounds. And that was the only stove we had access to last year. So we were just glad we had a stove of any kind that even worked marginally. So a new stove would be good if that means a small hood. We don't need the big commercial kitchen at this point. That can be scheduled for down the road. We'd like to have more men's bathrooms because our guests are primarily men. It's about 80% men and 20% women. We were able to give the ladies their own space at Ashley Street with their own bathrooms, which that got a big well done from the ladies. As most of us know who have a husband, that's big plus. We would like to have, if possible, a shower. Some of our guests come in soiled. Some of our guests come to us from the hospital. It would be nice if we could clean them up rather than just sending to the bathroom for a sink bath. I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Mr. Seawood for, I think, a tremendous change in the culture of the city when it comes to social services. I really do appreciate it. And thank all of you for the support you've given him. And we do hope to open plan to open on November 1st this year, and our plans now are to operate year-round from this point forward. So, anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the proposed construction of renovations and improvements to the Ashley Street Center?
Renee Carter, representing Race Matters Friends. And so I kind of want to bring things back. And I know that we had some problems with the mobile showers and the washing machines because they have to not be mobile, which sounds counterintuitive, but I guess that's the way it is. But a reminder that the original plan was not for them to be at Ashley Street Center, that they were going to be at a central location where people who probably won't be utilizing the Ashley Street Center would be able to access those showers and laundry facilities. And so when we say it's not a priority, it's still a priority for those people, and we need to keep that in mind. And so I think Mike's going to address that for us, aren't you? Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Chris Jones, Second Ward. First of all, I'd like to thank Shane. I was one of the people who did attend the open house where we thought we were going to talk, but it was just people talking, not actually information being presented, except for to see potential layouts. I would also like to ditto everything that Anthony and Renee just said, especially dittoing what Anthony said about being so disappointed in a city manager who says that he doesn't lie and he doesn't misrepresent, but yet, it was presented to the council presented that those showers would be mobile. And the way we found out that they would not be mobile is at the city's state of the budget meeting. Renee, Tracy, and I attended afterwards, and Tracy and I asked DeCarlin and asked Mike about it, and we were told that it would not be mobile. You guys promised it would be mobile. You guys promised this would be able to go to the different encampments. You guys promised this would be able to go to the different locations where people are, because not everybody can go to Ashley Street and not everybody can go to Wilkes. So disappointed in you guys. Thank you.
Would anybody wish to speak on public hearing 2923, preferring to keep your comments restricted to the construction and renovation improvements to the Ashley Street Center?
Hello, Nikki Davis with the district, downtown CID 11 South 10th Street. We also kind of wanted to agree with what Debbie had said. We appreciate you guys buying this building, taking the initiative to get this started, agreeing with the need for showers, the need for washing machines for their clothing. We do hope that possibly in the future there is a connection with Turning Point and a mail room for people to be able to get their mail. I think that's incredibly important. But we appreciate you guys doing this and the work you're doing on it. And please reach out if you need me.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on the proposed construction of renovations and improvements to the Ashley Street Center? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I have a couple clarifying questions. So remind me, capital improvement project. Ashley Street Center is now owned by the City of Columbia. When we invest in a physical infrastructure, we have to go through an interested parties and a few more hoops than probably we would do if we were just under a certain dollar amount. Shane, can you tell me what the process is for making physical improvements to the facility and the timeline with this one, knowing that we had to wait till room at the inn was out before making improvements?
Sure. It varies a little bit. For instance, if we own that asset and we are just maintaining it, some of that stuff that we can do. But when you're making an it's quite one of the questions that I asked the law department. I said, hey, I'm not expanding the footprint, but I am changing how this facility has been used in the past. It was the old VFW. And so I was advised I needed to go through the public improvement process, which leads me down a path of needing to come here tonight for a public hearing, have an IP meeting before that, put together a bid that goes out to the public, those types of things. We're lucky in that the ordinance does allow us to pursue a design build. So that's part of that last bullet point on the last slide. That kind of outlines what I've got to do do the project design build, but I've got to follow that process.
Right, because it's
Mayor?
public money. Yeah, DeCarlin.
And can you speak of the things that you've done so far?
Sure. A lot of that is in the memo, but I think it's important to kind of say those things out loud. We repaired, removed, and replaced fence along Interstate 70. We did mechanical upgrades, maintenance, and inspection to ensure adequate heating during the winter months. We did that right when Room at the Inn first moved in. We did a variety of fire protection-related improvements. We added the facility to our term and supply contracts for mowing and snow removal, those types of things. Once Room at the Inn closed for the season, we installed fencing along the east property line and fencing around the exterior air conditioning units. We completed heating, ventilation, and air conditioning improvements to ensure efficient heating and cooling going forward. That was with the idea that it would be used year-round. We completed full parking lot improvements. That parking lot was never intended for a city bus to turn around in it multiple times a day, and the parking lot showed that at the end of just one season of Room at the Inn. In total, we've done approximately $193,000 worth of work since we purchased the property. We also hired a mechanical engineer to complete a review of the existing building to help us determine fire suppression, domestic water, sanitary sewer, natural gas, HVAC, electrical, and fire alarm needs. That's what I needed to know, so I knew had any idea of what the cost would be to do this kind of work. Would it even be able to have washers and dryers and additional bathrooms and support a fully working commercial kitchen? That the existing kitchen hasn't been that for quite some time. So,
Thank you, Shane. Additional follow-up question. DeCarlin or Griggs, you're there. The conversation around, I know that this is in addition to the Ashley Street project, but since it did come up during comments, the mobile shower, this is obviously a space for it to land. Tell us about its mobility and use elsewhere.
Yes, it is a mobile shower. It's a trailer that's pulled behind. It's just like any other camping trailer you have. I think what I expressed our concern was we had anticipated that we could fill up the 500-gallon tank of water, then haul it to a site, park it, get a generator, plug it into electric, heat it up, and then operate it. Well, we found out that you can't haul it full of water. So what we have to do now is haul it to a site, fill it with water, and then we can plug it into a generator, plug it into electric, and then we can operate it as needed. Then when the waste tank fills up, then we can either have a porta pot company come and pump it out to haul it back or do something else with it. Why we like the idea of creating a permanent spot at Ashley is then it could just sit there and automatically keep running all the time. We wouldn't have to wait on the water. We wouldn't have to wait on a pump truck. But it doesn't stop it from being mobile. It could still be moved to any private site, any public site, anything like that. So it just has those qualifications to it.
So one of the things that we discussed is that in order to locate it at a location, we have to make sure that we have a place where we can fill it up with water. So that's either connecting to a fire hydrant or using our water pump and water tanker to fill it up, and we can borrow one from the fire district. But normally what we look at is a place where it can be located to a fire hydrant and also located where we can discharge the water out of the system. So the biggest thing is that we cannot move it while it's full of water. But that does not mean it's not mobile. It just means that we have to make sure that we understand where we're locating it and make sure there's a water source in a way that we can discharge water out of it.
And I assume we'll be figuring this out.
And that's exactly it. And that's part of what we're working on. And so we're working with the health department, with Public Works, and trying to design exactly where it can go to. The other thing that we're working on from a legal standpoint is actually working on an agreement for if there is a not-for-profit that would like to utilize that building, utilize that facility, what does that look like and what are their responsibility for if they decide to utilize it.
All right, and I realize I'm getting us off what the public hearing comment is, but
Well, I'll ask one that I think is applicable. So we're looking at putting showers in at Ashley Street, but we're also talking about parking the trailer there. And does that mean that that's just where it will stay? Or are we talking about it being functional in that place?
It's looking for a place where it will stay.
Yeah.
And that's just in between uses, so instead of keeping it at the garage or keeping it at another facility, we know that that's where it's going to be housed. But that does not mean it can't be moved to different locations.
But do we have plans to use it at Ashley Street?
I think that's one of the things that we're considering
on that
is possibly also using it there. Because the other thing that we're talking about, there's another project that we kind of talked about is the pallet homes. And so if we actually end up putting pallets at that location, there's a need for showers. And this could be used as showers for the people who are living in those pallets.
Okay, all right, thanks.
any other questions or council comments? All right, Sheila, I'll make a motion to approve the renovation and improvement of Ashley Street Center located at 1509 Ashley Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Andrea. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, moving on to public hearing 3023. Sheila, will you please read public hearing 3023?
Public hearing 3023 is a proposed addition of two new 161 kV station class transformer and switchgear lineups at the Bolstead substation.
Do we have a staff report?
Good evening, David Sorrell, Director of Utilities. With me tonight is Erin Keys, who's the Assistant Director acting for Electric, and Eric Wartz, Engineering Supervisor with Electric. So Sheila said this is a public hearing for the proposed construction of, or addition of two new 161,000 volt substation class transformer and switchgear lineups at the Bolstead substation. This substation is located on Peabody Road near Route B. It serves the electric load for a large portion of the Route B industrial corridor and other parts of the surrounding area. We held an IP meeting for this project on May 17. 3 citizens attended this meeting. This project graphic shows the existing two 69,000 volt transformer and switchgear lineups. They're on the bottom of the picture. The two new 161,000 volt transformer and switchgear lineups and the associated bus work would be located on the north side of the substation, or the part that's in red on this diagram. This would increase the power capacity of this substation by from 20 MVA per transformer to 25 MVA per transformer, so we get 10 additional MVA. That increases redundancy and reliability in this area. It would also allow 2 new distribution feeders to be constructed to accommodate future growth in this area. Those feeders would be built in the future as development warranted their extension. If you'll recall, the master plan prepared by Siemens recommended that we not add a transformer or a new substation to our system, but we instead expand the existing substations, and so that's what we intend to do here. We're proposing to use the two 161,000 transformers and switchgear that we purchased for the new proposed Mill Creek substation, 6 or 7 years ago, that have been sitting in storage at the power plant for this project. Transformers take a couple of years to acquire now, so if we were to utilize those pieces of existing equipment, that would cut out delays in this project due to supply chain issues. We would not need any easements to construct this project, and so if you direct us to proceed with final design, we'll bring back to council an ordinance to construct, and then we would also ask that We allocate some of the electric bond funds for the Mill Creek substation to pay the approximate $1.2 million that would be needed to complete this installation. The existing transformer and switchgear that we purchased were $1.8 million, so that means the total project would be $3 million, but it would only be an additional $1.2 million with this. With that, I'd be willing to attempt to answer questions.
Well, you just answered mine. I was going to ask, what would it be if we didn't have those transformers for 2016? Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would anybody wish to speak on public hearing 3023? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Did any comments, questions come to staff on this? No, I do appreciate the use of infrastructure that we have not been able to utilize. I appreciate the thoughtfulness to that, and especially hearing about I forgot, what did you say the delay was on new transformers?
It's about 2 years right now, if I understand correctly.
Okay. And I assume the price also has increased besides just the delay in waiting.
I assume it's gone up. I know it's gone up drastically for single-phase transformers like we use in residential subdivision, almost tenfold.
Okay, yeah. Any other council comments? All right, I make a motion to authorize staff to proceed with the final design for the Bolstat substation transformer and switchgear additions. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm gonna give that one to Don.
Yeah,
He's
give
right
it to
there.
Don.
Seconded by Don. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None, motion passes. All right, you're still there. Hello. Sheila, will you please read public hearing 3123?
Public hearing 3123 is the proposed reconfiguration of the 161 kV bus at the Perchy Creek substation.
Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, so as Sheila said, this is the public hearing for the proposed reconfiguration of the 161,000 volt bus at Percy Creek substation.
Bless you.
The Percy Creek substation is located west of Scott Boulevard, immediately west of the Germantown subdivision that's located in the county. This substation serves the electric load for much of the western south part of Columbia, including the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant. We held an interested parties meeting on May 17th. 3 citizens attended this meeting, and the resolution estimate for this project is $1.2 million. So this project graphic shows the location of the new circuit breakers, bus work, and an additional tie breaker on the south side of the substation, which is on the right in this diagram. Work would include structures to accommodate a future 161,000 volt transmission line that we would need to have to meet future potential requests for firm power from the University of Missouri and regulatory requirements. At this time, the transmission path has not been decided, but in the event it ever happens, it would need to land at Percy substation. And this would allow it to be done. It makes sense to do it while you're already doing reconfiguration of the bus work. The primary function of the project is to replace inoperable circuit switchers that are on the bus with new circuit breakers. These breakers are more reliable protection devices meant to protect the equipment from electric faults on the transmission line or the bus. And in order to replace the circuit switchers with breakers, the bus and the transmission interconnection structures have to be rebuilt. In addition to replacing the 2 switchers, a third tie breaker would be added to the bus to increase reliability and improve ease of maintenance. This upgrade would provide more ability to efficiently maintain and repair the system, and thereby potentially reducing outage times during a significant event. Again, no easements would be required to construct this project, and there's sufficient space on the property to accommodate the proposed reconfiguration. So if we're directed to proceed with final design, we'll come back to council with an ordinance to construct and an appropriation to allocate some of the electric bond funds from the Mill Creek substation project to facilitate this as well. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer questions.
Any questions of council for staff? Yes, Nick Foster? Oh, no question? All right. I'll go ahead and open up Don's got one. Kidding.
So this would also facilitate or help when we finish the upgrades to the water treatment plant, wastewater plants, specifically the water plant, because I know that's a project that's pending.
This would only make improvements to the 161,000 volt feed coming into the substation. It wouldn't do anything on the distribution side. That's actually the next public hearing.
Okay, I'll wait.
Any other questions from us? I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody would wish to speak on public hearing 3123, upgrades to the Pershing Creek substation. Says bus, but it's not a real bus. Seeing none, go ahead and close the public comment. Council comments. All right. I'll go ahead and make a motion to authorize staff to proceed with the final design of the Pershing Creek Substation 161 kV bus reconfiguration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Nick. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on. Thank you, it is. All right. Up next, we have, Sheila, will you please read public hearing 3223?
Public hearing 3223 is the proposed addition of one new 69 kV station class transformer and switchgear lineup at the Pershing Creek substation.
Do we have a staff report?
Again, this is the public hearing for the addition of one new 69,000 volt station class transformer and switchgear at Pershing Creek substation. Again, this substation is located west of Scott Boulevard, immediately west of Germantown subdivision, and it serves the electric load for a lot of southwest Columbia, including the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant. We held an IMP meeting on May 17th of this year with three people in attendance, and the resolution estimate for this project is $2.1 million. So one of the things I want to mention is, if you recall from our Siemens master plan, Pershing Creek substation is probably our most overloaded substation in town, and it probably needs to be done. If it's my choice, it'd be the first project completed, but with transformers and equipment being 2 years out, we're a ways out on being able to get this completed, but it's loaded to a point now that there are times we would not be able to take a transformer out of service for maintenance because we wouldn't have anywhere to go with the load. But this graphic shows the addition of a third 69,000 volt to 13,800 volt station class transformer and switchgear lineup on the west side of the substation at the bottom of the diagram. The two existing transformers have a capacity of 20 MVA, and the new transformer would also have 20 MVA capacity, so it would provide a lot better redundancy and reliability and allow for better maintenance of the system. The two existing station class transformers are able to serve existing load, but as I said earlier, we'd be unable to do so in the event that one of them was rendered inoperable due to malfunction. So the third transformer would really increase reliability in this area. This substation has seen a large increase in load due to developments on the west side of Columbia. And then you talk about the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, they're both served by this substation, and so a third transformer would provide increased reliability to those essential services for the city. 3 new distribution feeders would be constructed from the new switchgear as separate projects in the future. And there again, that would depend on when development warranted them be put in. But one of those feeders would be constructed to provide backup electric source specifically for the water treatment plant and the other area we serve in that southwest portion of town. Again, no easements are needed to construct this project, and there's sufficient space on the property, so if we're directed to proceed with final design, we'll come back to council with an ordinance to construct and an appropriation to reallocate bond funds from the Mill Creek project to this project. In summary, then, I'll say we got about $4.5 million that we're asking to transfer from previous projects to this one, and I believe there's about $7.8 million remaining bond money that we have sitting there that's been on hold while we've decided how to move forward. So with that, I'll be happy to attempt to answer questions.
Any questions of staff from council?
So with this one, we do have to acquire the transformer, correct?
Yes, and that's another item I was going to bring up. So we have at Bolstad a transformer that's pretty much at the end of its life that we would probably intend to scrap. The other one is not necessarily that, but we could leave both of them up there just in case. Or one thing that we could do is once we put the new transformers in at Volstead, we could take one of the existing to Pershing and install it, and then 2 years later, when the transformer came in, we could take that one out and put the new one in, and that would allow this project also to be completed much sooner than the supply chain allows at the current time.
I would be in favor of that. Go ahead. Whatever you need.
Any other council comments? Okay, I'll go ahead for the one we have before us. Make a motion to authorize staff to proceed with.
You ought to have the public hearing.
Oh, good Lord, sorry. I keep doing it. No one comes up. Someone should come up now. All right, any other council comments? I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would anyone like, thank you, Renee. Would anyone like to talk on 3223? Give me a reason.
Take a run for the team.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Susan Renee Carter, Ward 2. Please let the man do whatever he needs to do to save Pushy Creek substation, because it's not looking good.
Thank you. Good on you. Appreciate that. Would anyone else like to come up to the podium and speak on 3223? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Sorry, I got excited all together. Any council comments, additional follow-ups on this?
What Renee said.
Right. All right, so I'll go ahead and make the motion to authorize staff to proceed with the final design for the Pershing Creek Substation Transformer and Switchgear Addition. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Nick Foster. It's his ward. He claimed it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. All right, we're now moving on to old business. We had 2 items from the consent agenda that were requested to be pulled. So Sheila, will you please read B 17423?
Council Bill 174-23 is an ordinance amending ordinance number 018197 that established an artery deer hunting program to allow hunting on a portion of the John W. Oswald Park property located on the south side of Mexico Gravel Road and east of Vandiver Drive, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
All right, do we have a staff report?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Gabe Huffington, Parks and Recreation Director. Since 2004, the City of Columbia has had a deer management program designed to minimize the number of vehicle-to-deer collisions in Columbia. This graph shows the number of hunters we have each year defined by the pink line, and then the number of deer taken off property is that blue line below. So you can see there's steady numbers with both in terms of what they do. But again, it's designed and was implemented with MDC, the Missouri Department of Conservation, to help with minimizing our vehicle-to-deer collisions in Columbia. The other graph that we use a lot in terms of our accidents in Columbia is provided by the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And you can see from 2004 when we implemented this down to where we are, this is in 2020, there has been a decrease, and we'd like to think that our program has helped to contribute to that decrease. Our program dates are September 15th to January 15th. This runs concurrently with the archery season through the Missouri Department of Conservation. Any hunter that wants to hunt on our property also has to possess a valid Missouri hunter's license, required to follow all of those laws and regulations with MDC. Our hunters also have to attend the city's hunter orientation class every other year, and that provides them access to hunt on those city properties. We have all of this information on como.gov on the Parks and Recreation web pages as well. The hunting program currently has 10 sites included. They are positioned all around the city of Columbia. Many of them are adjacent to roadways where we're going to see vehicle speeds of over 50 miles per hour, somewhere where we could have a serious injury or accident related to a deer-to-vehicle collision. I will say last year we added Bonneview Nature Sanctuary as one of those properties. Adjacent to many roadways, but then also at the request of Columbia Audubon Society to help with the deer population that's currently at Fairview Park and Bonneview Nature Sanctuary and the Audubon Society property. Some of the rules that we have for the program: we don't allow any type of four-wheelers or motorized vehicles on city property in conjunction with the hunting program. We don't allow any hunting or field dressing within 100 feet of any private property or city trail. This includes parking lots, facilities, and any other area where you may have interaction with a park user that's not within the program hunting. So when we talk about property next to the MKT trail, you're going to stay 100 feet away from that property. Anytime that you would need to retrieve a deer that is shot on city property that may go to private property, that person is required to make contact with that private property owner. And then you have to be a minimum age of 15 years to hunt without direct supervision of an adult. All of the individuals that go through our program that want to hunt on city properties are given this permit on the right. The top portion has to be in their vehicle, so that alerts our park rangers, conservation agents with MDC, and then also Columbia Police Department that there are individuals at a park property or city property, and they're participating in the hunting program. The bottom permit is carried on their person, and that allows us to, if we were to walk up and find someone that's hunting at the program, we can ask them for that. We know they're legal in terms of our hunting program. Anyone that harvests a deer on city property, we require them to do one of two things. They're either going to call the phone number that is included on the permit. That gets you directly to the Missouri Department of Conservation, to our agent that works with us on the program, or you can go on como.gov and you can register that deer harvest. This just allows us to track the number of deer that are taken from a particular property, so that we know, one, MDC has that data, but then also for us, and we know that there are users within the program. Our proposed change to the deer hunting program for this year is to add the John W. Allspaw Park as a hunting location. We accepted this park property as a donated property back in January. This property is located off of Mexico Gravel Road, adjacent to Highway 63. So it is desirable from an aspect of deer to vehicle collisions. Some of the rules that we'll have for the property, September 15th to January 15th. We are only proposing to hunt on the main portion of the property. We aren't going to hunt north of Mexico Gravel Road on that acreage. This allows us to define the parking area, and then as we instruct hunters that are in the program, we know that all of them are basically going south from the parking lot to access that. So you can see that 100-foot barrier between private property, park property, also from the Hinkson Creek all the way up to Mexico Gravel Road. And so this entire area will be part of that hunting property. So we are requesting approval of the legislation amending the ordinance to add John W. Allspaw Park as a hunting property in the archery deer management program. Happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, would anyone from the public wish to speak on Bill 174-23?
Ms. Jones, Second Ward. I am frequently asked, did you hear what idiotic thing the council is doing now? It happens weekly. And somebody came up to me right after the Bonneview got done, and they were like, can you believe they're doing that in my neighborhood? And I'm like, yeah, I was at city council when they did it. And then some friends of mine who live really close to the Allspaw property, they were like, can you believe that they're doing that? And the reason why is because there's so many people around. Now, I come from a hunting family. And one of the rules in hunting families is that you do not hunt anywhere near residential areas. You don't hunt near houses. You don't hunt near people. This is hunting near houses. It is within range of houses. This is within range of other private property. This is within range of hurting a person who is using the park the way it was meant to be used. We have a problem in that area with crime. There's been lots of problem with crime through guns, through other things, through a lot of different things. And now you want to add a weapon, because yes, bows and arrows are weapons. You want to add that too. So we've already got people being hurt, and you want to put the potential for more. Now, I actually am fairly familiar with those areas because I'm in that area several times a month, and I do actually know those deer. Like, there's one deer that only has one horn. We call him the unicorn deer. In the Allspaw property, if you go there certain times of the day, you will see the whole herd of deer. You will see the whole flock of turkeys. They're not running into the streets. They know what time to cross. This is not an area where we've got an overpopulation. But what you are going to be doing is putting at risk children. You're going to be putting at risk people who live in those residential areas. Just like you should not be hunting near residential areas. It is asinine according to hunting culture. Thank you.
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak on ordinance number 1018197? Sorry.
Anthony Wilroth, downtown business owner, and just if it was me sitting up there, I'd like to see, if I was you, I'd like to see from city staff when they're presenting a supposedly data-driven argument, a lot more better data than what was just shown to you. I don't particularly have a feeling one way or the other on this ordinance, but when we're showing two charts and one doesn't seem to show much of a correlation at all, and the other one shows that we instituted something in 2004 and then doesn't fall off until a few years later, and your city staff member up here says, we'd like to think our program had something to do with that. Well, that's not very good data. I'd like to think a whole lot of things, but if I don't have direct data to prove it, that's a useless statement, a completely useless statement. We didn't see anything about whether you can see similar fall off in deer vehicle collisions in communities that don't have a program like this. So again, no matter what kind of data is being presented to you guys, if I were you, I would scrutinize it a lot harder than what you are. We can just look to the, keep this very brief, the previous public hearing where you were told that it takes 2 years to get transformers, if my understanding is correct. Well, that's not a very confident statement, if my understanding is correct. I should hope our utility director's understanding is correct.
Anthony,
so let's get some better data and more confident statements from city staff to you guys so you guys can make informed decisions.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on Bill 17423? Seeing none, we'll go to our council comments. Any council comments or questions for Gabe?
Quick question for you. Of the 31 deer, do you know if any of those were donated to Share the Harvest?
I do not. So when that data is tracked after someone checks that deer with MDC in our department. So I don't know how many are shared. I can ask MDC that information, see if they have that, but we don't track that just because once we get the information of the deer harvest off the property, that is what we need to be able to track the program.
Okay. So we've been doing this since 2004, so this would be, if I'm doing the math right, 19 years, 20 years. How many injuries have we had?
Zero.
Two?
Zero.
Zero. Okay, thank you. So no injuries to either hunters or the surrounding public?
Not that has ever been reported to the Parks and Recreation Department.
Thank you.
And then just one follow-up. This space, this park obviously was donated by the Ospaw family to us. Do you know if they allowed, was there, because this was in the city, was there allowed hunting before, but not if it was city? Tell us more about that.
Yep. So when we had discussions with John Allspaw, when we first started with the donation discussions, he mentioned that he did actually contract out the land for hunting. And so John actually did this as a private owner with 4 or 5 individuals in the community. And so it's a continuation of hunting on that property to reduce the number of deer.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Sheila, will you please call roll on B 17423?
Council Bill 17423, Mr. Canoth?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo?
Yes. All right, moving on. Sheila, will you please read Bill 17523?
Council Bill 17523 is an ordinance authorizing a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the Como Yards and Small Grant Program to assist homeowners and businesses create native Missouri landscapes to support and improve urban biodiversity, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
We have a staff report.
Yeah, good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Eric Hempel, Manager of the Office of Sustainability. I'll start with just kind of explaining, if you're not aware, about the Como Wild Yards program. It was started in 2017 by our community conservationist, and it began as a program that provided site visits from the community conservationists and from there, the homeowner or business owner. I do want to also say the language in here says businesses. We also have projects with local nonprofits, community organizations, so that business may be unnecessarily narrow. But there will be consultations on the site which would result in a plan of
what to plant, how to maintain the planting, and education on the benefits. What this memorandum of understanding does is two things. One thing, it brings in a partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that expands our capacity to deliver on-site consultations. The other thing that it does is it allows us to provide direct services to include providing plants and providing assistance for the installation and maintenance of the Coma Wild Yards sites. If anyone has ever tried to replace fescue with any sort of, well, really anything else, maintenance is one of the main things that can make or break success. So with adding Fish and Wildlife Service, they already have existing programs and expertise in providing landowner assistance for that kind of conversion activity. So this memorandum of understanding sets out the roles for the City of Columbia and Fish and Wildlife Service, and is intended to expand the reach of the program and benefit both organizations. So happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of council, of staff? No? Would anyone from the public wish to speak on B-175-23?
Anthony or Tall. Chris Jones, Second Ward. I asked to have this pulled because this apparently has been a program for years, and I've never heard of it. As somebody who is into growing native plants, no clue. I would like for you, as the city, to maybe promote this a little bit more, so that people will know, as well as I would like for, because we are putting this forward to do more natives, that we make a effort in our parks and at our city buildings to only plant natives. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Anthony Wilroth, downtown business owner. I am also with Chris. I've not really heard of this program before, despite living in Columbia for a long time, since before the program's inception. I also think that there's probably a lot of room to reach out to property owners that are having some troubles maintaining their property and let them know about this program and find ways to, transform their yards into something that fits this program and might be a little bit easier to maintain for people that might be struggling with that.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? None. We'll go to council comments. I'll start, Eric, as being one with the office when this program started. I'm impressed to see that we're finally able to also offer some direct loans with this partnership, because I know as a small department, it's sometimes hard to advertise, but also do funding programs to get more outreach and done out there. So thank you for doing this and for seeking out this partnership. I think it's also important too to see, like, everyone's busy. And we're also busy. We have so many things coming at us. So I know that advertising programs and getting the word out is hard there. And I prefer when people don't assume things and they actually do work. So I'm appreciative of the outreach that community conservationists and sustainability has done, whether it's through their monthly newsletters, through their multiple social media posts, and also for their outreach within our community groups and organizations. So thank you for that. Any other council comments? All right, Sheila, will you please call roll on B-175-23?
Council Bill 175-23, Mr. Knoth,
Yes.
Ms. Weiner,
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman,
Yes.
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo.
Yes. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Sheila, will you please read the items on the consent agenda twice and call the roll?
Items on the consent agenda include Bills 15823, 15923, 16023, 16123, 16223, 16323, 16423, 16523, 16623, 16723, 16823, 16923, 17023, 17123, 17223, 17323, 17623, 17723, 17823, 17923, and 18023. And resolutions 11123, 11223, and 11323. Bills 15823, 15923, 16023, 16123, 16223, 16323, 16423, 16523, 16623, 16723, 16823, 16923, 17023, 17123, 17223, 17323, 17623, 17723, 17823, 17923, and 18023, and resolutions 11123, 11223, and 11323. Mr. Canoth.
Yes.
Ms. Swainer.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Ms. Peters.
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo.
Yes. Well done, Sheila.
Thank you, Councilmember Foster, for waiting.
All right, moving on, we have no items under new business, so we'll move on to intro and first read. I'll talk a little slower so you can catch your breath, and then I'll ask the clerk to read the items under intro and first reading.
All bills are introduced by the mayor unless otherwise indicated. Bills 18123, 18223, 18323, 18423, 18523, 18623, 18723, 18823, 18923, 19023, 19123, 19223, 19323, and 19423. First reading.
Thank you. Moving on to the report section. So up first, we have correspondence from the Citizens Police Review Board regarding notice of appeals. Do we have staff or anybody to provide commentary? I don't know if the chair is here for this one. So Carlin, do you know if there was any communication besides outside of this, or maybe Nancy?
I don't believe so.
No communication other than that. Their suggestion just comes from the time it takes when items happen to be mailed, and they feel like there's additional time needed for someone to file an appeal.
And so the request is for us to request staff to come back with a change into the ordinance for this piece?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any comments or questions?
Comfortable with that?
Supportive of that?
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we have consensus from council to request to come back with an ordinance with this change.
All right.
All right, appreciate that. All right, moving on to our next report, we have communication from the Building Construction Codes Commission pertaining to the review of the 21 International Code Council family of codes. I see we have staff from Community Development and Sustainability for Climate Environment Commission, I assume. Tim.
To my right, I'm Tim Teddy, once again, Community Development Director. To my right is John Simon. He's the Building Regulations Supervisor. He's also staff support to the Building Construction Codes Commission, and they are making this request of council. You'd initiated the 2021 International Code Cycle, and this is the whole family of model codes published by the International Codes Council that they have reviewed. However, they have set their sights on the 2024 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code and would like council's blessing to focus on that rather than adopt the 2021 for the reasons explained in the report. Eric, do you want to come up?
Any questions from council? Is there any, John, I know that it takes a while. We wait for the code books to come out, right? And have it. Is there any sort of pre-work that the Building Construction Codes Commission or the Climate Environment Commission can be doing, whether or not it's training or pre-reading before? Because I know it's a really extensive process to review the codes that are proposed.
It is very extensive, and yes, we've developed a very productive relationship between the commissions. In fact, we're meeting at the end of this month regarding what we can do in the interim in terms of training while we're waiting for the 24 edition, and we did we, in good faith, have decided to look at the 24 just as soon as it gets printed. Because we realize Columbia is on the leading edge and we always want to adopt the latest and greatest codes.
Council questions or comments? Do you need any direction from us or just support of the process? I know this originally came to us as kind of a resolution to proceed. Is there anything that needs to come back to change for us, Nancy? Is there any concerns with having them pause for the cause until wait till the 24 codes are published? I think you have consensus on council on that. So Thank you, appreciate this, and appreciate the two commissions working together.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on. We've got our next report, Report 4423. This is the Downtown Community Improvement District required to come forward with us. I see Nikki Davis is here. Nikki, I don't know if you want to come present any highlights for the fiscal year 24 budget that has come to us.
Nikki Davis, the district, downtown CID, 11 South 10th Street. I am here for any of your questions. I didn't prepare highlights, but I love that, and I will do that for you next time.
Appreciate the email coming to us. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to make sure to elevate for us in relation to some of the recent conversations we'd had about like the block by block program? I assume that the board is continuing that partnership with the city.
Yeah, that's been an amazing partnership this last year, something we have never done before. The alleyways are technically the city's purview, but being that we get so many different complaints about our alleys and the way that the people that live downtown or work downtown are throwing away the trash, we did a pilot program originally with the city to have our block by block team, which are the guys you see downtown with the jackets on cleaning our sidewalks, start in the alleyways this year. And it's been very successful. We've had, I think, tremendous response from that. Of course, we do have about a 5-person staff for all of downtown, so it's something we're still trying to figure out the best way to do this, but it's been a great program. I'm super happy to be able to work with the city in this program, and it looks like we are continuing with this alleyway program.
Any other questions for the district director? No?
I just have a comment, and that I'm downtown a lot, so I see your guys frequently. I have not gone through the alleys, but the streets look great, and they do a wonderful job of keeping the downtown area looking good.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right, and this one's just kind of information only. Will be included in our pieces, so thank you, Ms. Davis. Appreciate it. And then our final report for the evening is our interdepartmental transfer of funds. Anything on this, Matthew or DeCarlin, that you would like to elevate to the conversation?
No.
None? There's no big ones? All right, this one's information only. All right, so we're now at the end of our meeting. So we'll do general comments of the public and then the city council and then of staff. So I ask if anybody from the public would wish to speak, please come up to the podium.
Eugene Elkin, 3406 Range Line. Going to be saying some things, and I'm going to be concluding by saying something I don't choose to want to say. We've been hearing a lot about our police. We've had the killings. Social workers, we hope there's going to be more working inside the city capacity. But we have a shortage or turnover in the business called Burrell. When we think we're going forward with something, please check out the facts. Do we have the coverage in our police department for social workers or social gentlemen that have been trained to handle the mental illness? We've had beatings, and that was really sad to see that on television and nothing was done. Now we've had a death, which is several over the years. Thing I'm trying to not want to say, if I say I've been out here since '09, I'm going to issue my first warning in all these years, and I've never, ever warned the city. I don't speak like this. I'm just a citizen. But this warning is to each and every one of you. And you better be listening closely, because Eugene ain't got nothing to do but tell the facts. I met someone over the weekend, downtown Columbia. Didn't know anything. I work with the homeless. I'm glad to talk to them. We've got an organization trying to go onto the streets of Columbia and volunteer to talk to them. So be it. They wanted me to do more. I said, wait a minute, I've been doing this since '09. At the end of this particular conversation, I heard a name, and I didn't forget it. This individual has only been on our streets maybe a couple of weeks. He was a former Kansas City boxer. He will use your illegal pot heavily if that be the case. I just know what I witnessed. He's very friendly. He beats people. He's used bats on windshields. He's already tested a food vendor in downtown Columbia. Am I serious? I ain't got time to make this up. This is a true warning for each and every citizen. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Anthony Wilroth, downtown business owner. So as Eugene just pointed out, somebody died after an encounter with our police department over the weekend. The police say it hasn't been determined whether or not the gentleman shot himself or the police shot him, but the police narrative also says that they shot upon the gentleman firing at them, so it's kind of hard to piece together how anybody but our police officers would have been the one to kill him personally. You know, I'm not stupid. I don't doubt that there's situations where once it's crossed the line that somebody's firing at our police officers, that lethal force may be necessary if that's indeed what happened. But the problem is what happened before then, who gets to know it, and when they get to know it. And there's honestly not a single law in the state of Missouri that says that you guys can't show us body cam footage from things like that. There's statute that says that when it's part of an open investigation, that's a moment that you can keep things that would normally be public records secret, but that's not a have to thing. So we're left with a situation where all we have is the police's word at what happened, and then another police department is going to investigate it and give us their word about what happened. The last time that our police department killed somebody was just this January. They killed a gentleman named Jordan Pruitt. That got investigated. Officers got cleared of charges. We still haven't seen the body cam footage. All we have is to trust what the police told us happened. And that's not transparent. That doesn't work for a lot of people. And it's not to say that the cops are bad or they definitely did things wrong there. Maybe the video will exonerate them. But if you're somebody who, you have a family member that struggles with mental health or is potentially suicidal, and you want to know what that response looks like when the cops show up. What was the breakdown? Where was the failing? Was it preventable? You know, it's for our safety. Like I don't do well when things like this happens. You know, it bothers me. And what bothers me more than the event itself happening is how little response there is from our elected leaders, from just the community in general. It seems like an awful lot of apathy, a lot of people afraid to step in it if they might criticize the police department too harshly. How is it criticizing the police department too harshly to ask what the hell happened and to say, please show us so I can be confident that if my brother or sister or mom or daughter or friend is having suicidal ideations, that calling the police department isn't going to make it worse?
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak?
Hi, Carolyn Omperon, Fair Electric Rates Coalition. Some of our team members wanted me just to remind you after this long meeting that we did bring you a proposal at the beginning of the meeting, and we'd love to hear some discussion of your thoughts about it. perhaps a referral to the staff as well as a date when the staff might get back to you with a validation of the proposal viability. So, thank you.
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak?
Sixth Ward. I'd like to chime in with what Carolyn just said, and hopefully if the numbers come out right, that you would consider in a timely fashion a different way to get the rate increases initiated so we can proceed with the bonding.
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak?
I'm Dick Parker. I live at 215 West Sexton Road. About a week ago, I heard a news report that said this summer is likely the coolest number we will see. Actually, that we was basically anyone over 40. Clearly, the city is attempting to deal with our greenhouse gas production. The biggest part, of course, is the electric utility, which was responsible for 45% of the total in 2015, which is our base year for the CAP study. However, that's not the only thing that you control. You also control a major business in the city called the municipality. That was responsible for 6% in a large number of areas. You need to keep in mind on all of your decisions how it is impacting greenhouse gas production. Clearly, transportation of all sorts, for example, approving developments that require people to move a long distance to work. A number of my friends really complained about my support of building a lot of student housing right next to the university and downtown. From my perspective, that was ideal location. Easy walking distance to work and to play. Everything you do has some impact. I hope you enjoy and are able to go outside some and enjoy this cool summer.
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak?
You guys are really lucky to have the citizens in this community that are engaged, very intelligent, and constructive to help you guys do your job in these commissions and boards and everything. The real tragedy that I see, I've only been going to some of these for a couple of years, but there's a lot of learned individuals that go to the Water and Light Commission meeting, like Dick and Carolyn, and you know who they all are. A lot of them are retired from there. And I have heard them tell that commission the same thing that you guys have heard them tell you for months, okay? They're ignored. Instead of embracing, seriously considering what they're saying and giving it any priority. You know, there's a big difference between low priority and no priority, okay? Renewable energy with that commission has no priority. They put out purchase power agreement proposals and all that. That's nothing. There should be people that are dedicated in water and light, full-time, to going after this unprecedented amount of money that's laying out there from the county, from the state, from the federal government to fund renewable energy transition. What are we waiting for? This has been going on for 2 years. They didn't make their goals last year. They're not gonna add a thing this year. That community solar things, that's not gonna hit until next year. They're dead on arrival, flat. There's no progress being made. So seriously, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, you're not gonna get a different result. That commission needs to change, or be eliminated. You need to put somebody in there that's going to do your bidding and create a plan. They've had 2 years. There is no plan to achieve renewable energy 100% by 2030 or 2050 or 2090. There's nothing. So please, I've offered, I'll do this, I'll do it for nothing if you let me do it. But this is ridiculous. You guys deserve better than this. You're not getting your support from the city. You got this Energy Environment Commission. They should be going around and talking to every department in the city and coming up with this 100-item list to go after all this money that's out there. There's nothing. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Renee Carter, representing Race Matters Friends. And so I would like to address the police shooting of Mr. Rivera from the perspective of what happened with the first call, because we all know what happened in terms of there was a gun involved with the second call. And so what my request is, along with a need for us to address our climate action plan, is to also address our community violence plan and our mental health supports that we have in this community. We supposedly are working on a contract with Burrell, and like Jean mentioned, they're short-staffed. But we really need a plan of when police get called and someone is having a mental health crisis, is that someone who is trained and that isn't a police officer and shouldn't be a police officer, that as a city we have a plan for how those police officers are supported in a way that they don't have to make a decision to leave because they can't help someone, and then return to be shot at, so that we end up with people in a mental health crisis being dead instead of getting treatment. And so we keep coming back to the same place of how do we avoid police shootings, how do we avoid community violence, and how do we support people with mental health issues. And so I'd like to see the council also address how we can implement a plan that supports our citizens, our police, our county health department, so we have people who can address these issues so that we can stop people from dying in instances where we should be giving them treatment. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
I spoke about Chris Jones, Second Ward. I spoke about Mr. Rivera during opening public comments, but I would like to speak about a different incident that also happened last week with our police department. A week ago, yesterday, which was the last day, I believe, of the Jeff Jones's stint. Our police department was on the radio, on public bands, talking about different things, saying that they wanted to go for ice cream. Now, I totally get it. I joke around with my coworkers all the time, joking about ice cream, something we actually did today. However, it was all over the social media that night, and while normally there's about 50 people listening into the police radio, people were posting screenshots of it, and it got up to over 200. And the reason why is because, and here's a quote from social media, when they, quote, we can probably find someone with warrants from here to Andy's. And the other said, check the chicken place. Now, I'm assuming you don't need your DEI, a person from the city, to tell you the reason why that is racist and why that is a racist trope and why in the world you need to be having some very tough conversations with some of your police officers. Please make sure that this does not get swept under the rug. Thank you.
Would anybody else from the public wish to speak?
I had not planned to speak tonight, but since one of the topics that's concerned me recently, along with the regressive energy rate structure, is recycling, and I know you're hearing a lot about it, and unfortunately, I guess it's taken years to hear a lot about it and to study this. I believe that the delay in getting roll carts in this community has a lot to do with this. I've talked to some of the reporters. One guy that's written some articles for the Missourian, he says, I don't get it. I live in Chicago, there's roll carts. I don't get it. I live in Washington, D.C., there's roll carts. Every place these students have ever lived have roll carts. And I guess we decided to have a 7-year debate on it. But the issue for me is concern that we don't have, I don't know, do we have a plan for that second roll cart for recycling? Is that in the 2024 budget that will get that recycling cart? Because it takes a while to order it. And I don't know that it's in there. When are we going to have door-to-door recycling? And waiting till next year just seems insurmountable to me. I've worked on energy issues and conservation in the city for more than a dozen years with one of your commissions. We studied these issues, but here we are in 2023 working on the 24 budget. Do we have a recycling row cart ordered for this community so that when we do come to next March, we can do that project right? Thank you.
Alice. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? We're going to go to council comments. We'll start with Nick Canoth.
I request now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if it would be possible to get a report put together that sort of outlines the average amount of time it takes to get hired by the city, from application to being hired, and then maybe help us identify where some bottlenecks might be in that process or where gaps or holdups are. I know that we've got a ton of openings. I also know that we have people that are applying for jobs that we have here and haven't heard anything for, X amount of time. So I would just be curious to see what the average amount of time from application to start is for the city. That's what I've got.
Nick Foster.
I have a question about recycling. Do we have an idea about what it will take at this point to get recycling going again, curbside in particular, or anything else that would be an update on recycling?
Now, I don't have the paperwork in front of me that I previously shared, but we looked at different scenarios, one to do every other week, utilizing temporary staff and city staff, one every other week with just city staff, and then weekly with temporary and city staff, and then weekly with just city. Any event, I think it requires a minimum of 5 new full-time employees to be hired before we could start that back up and actually be able to perform it on a consistent basis.
Not 5 new positions, but 5 positions to fill current vacant positions.
Correct. It's 6, because there's one additional vacancy.
Okay.
So we're that far, that close to being able to get
So
started?
if we could hire 6 new refuse collectors or senior refuse collectors combination, we could come back with every other week.
Okay.
Well, to go on that, what are we doing to try to get those 6? I know we've talked about.
They're posted until filled. And so as soon as, we can just keep doing interviews and trying to get people. And we can also do CDL training, so if somebody wants to apply as part-time, we'll help them get their CDL license, and then they can get into a full-time position. So we're trying to fill them. We're not having a lot of success. And sometimes we fill one and we lose one.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything that's needed from council, I think on this one, obviously this is something we hear about a lot. We have to support innovation. Happy to do that, to get more people into these positions. Keep going. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, okay. That's it.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, going down the line.
Well, I just wanted to point out that there are barriers out on Broadway tonight, so our tax dollars at work. Please, everyone, be careful as you're leaving tonight because they're repaving out there overnight tonight. Just wanted to make a couple of comments about Ashley Street and the other things that have happened there. Just note again, I think I've noted this before, but I think it bears saying again that the purchase of the Ashley Street building, the purchase of the shower trailer, the increase in social services funding are largely at or primarily at the initiation of the city manager. And people who are in social services, and especially those who've been working with on homelessness in this community for a long time, know that this is a game changer. This is a huge difference. And so I'm grateful to the city manager again for the efforts to make that happen. I'm glad to see about Ashley Street that there's some flexibility about how that space might be configured. And so just encourage that as that moves along, that we make the very best use of that space. It seems to me the initial thing that we need to be sure of is that it's ready for Ratty when that time comes. And I'm confident we'll be able to get there on that. And I think that's it for now.
All right. Don?
No comment tonight.
Betsy?
Oh, I have a couple. My first question is where we are with the Unified Development Code and the Central City Overlay.
Contract's been signed with H3 Studio Inc., and they've started their data collection. So they're working primarily with the city's Geographic Information Systems Division of Information Technology on gathering data that can be mapped. So they'll be making all kinds of base maps as a first step. And then we'll get together with them very soon and get out a schedule of events on that.
Okay.
Yep.
And there was some discussion, it's probably not a question for you as much as for Barbara. Isn't there, or the council, isn't there a discussion about maybe getting an ad hoc committee together to work with the consultants once they've gathered their information?
Yeah, it's built into their scope of services that there would be touches with a stakeholder group is what it's called, not necessarily a formal committee, but a group that you could appoint and assign to give them some input. They're also going to be doing targeted focus groups as part of the public engagement, as well as general public forums. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for the public to participate as stakeholders or as just persons with a general interest.
Thank you.
Hey, Tim.
Yes. Alice had a question about recycling roll carts. I don't know if she's still here or not. My understanding is that we are waiting or getting trucks that will allow us to actually use the roll carts for the trash. And then we need to get roll carts, and all of that is going to be organized by March.
We've ordered 13 trucks.
Okay.
They're supposed to be delivered to where we could start collecting garbage, utilizing carts 1st of March. They should be delivered sometime in January. That was only for garbage. We were waiting for the results of RRT's analysis of the MRF and our collection methods and all that. And at the work session, I believe it was 2 weeks ago or maybe 3 weeks ago, whatever, they were recommending we do an automated collection with one roll cart, but still having the dual stream system. And so if we want to do that, then we would have to budget for that and get that ordered, and it would be that many months behind.
Okay. So for right now, we're just trying to get the roll carts and the trash organized.
Yep.
And if we can, get enough help to start going
And
back
if we had trucks for recycling now, we wouldn't have enough staff to do it either. We'd still be in the same situation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then I think for mine, first off, in relation to the electric rates, I have sent on the proposal that we received, both it was mentioned at public comment this morning, as well as we were sent, or this morning, it was still tonight, on the electric rates review has been sent on to staff for review. One comment I also wanted to add to it was the proposal that we received was in relation to our electric rates. And the proposal, that was the ordinance, and then the proposal attached to it was way bigger scope, which is something I know that's important to me in relation to decarbonization of our electric utility and reduction of electricity use in our community, or having more demand side programs, which are not normally in that part of the ordinance. And so I know I've requested from staff, kind of what are we doing? We have 100% renewable energy was provided to the Water and Light Advisory Board at their July meeting, which will be coming to us later this fall for us to see the comparison and options we have for more renewable energy. For our electric rates, still having it cost more, I know as more people use, is a way to incentivize a conservation. But parallel to that, for as well, is what can we do to improve the energy efficiency in facilities, whether or not it's our own municipal electric utility or our own municipal facilities, but also in the homes. Because the other piece to this, as we're looking at our electric rates, is that as we're looking to electrify more, to wean houses and businesses and residences off of natural gas and fossil fuels, they will be using more electricity. So how can I make sure that, what can we put into place, our built environment? And so I know we're expecting our climate action adaptation plan kind of annual report will be coming up at a future council meeting. So I look forward to seeing those opportunities that we have and things that are being encouraged by our city staff to make those improvements. I also want to put a pin in the discussion around the low income. Our low income, whether or not it's a low income fixed charge like some other cities and states are looking into, but what is being put into place for the rates as it gets to the members of our population that are housing cost burdened. And so I know that our Water and Light Advisory Board are planning a public meeting. They're reviewing this, I think, at their September meeting, if I recall. I don't think it's the meeting this week, but they might be talking about it. But their October, they'll be hosting a public hearing or public meeting to get ideas and the research that they've done so far on looking into what would a low income rate look like. And so while we heard a lot of feedback about the need for our rate increase for our bond, I do know that staff and our community members are looking at those other opportunities to address the bigger issue related to how we use energy and its impact on our environment and the climate. So I wanted to bring that up and also acknowledge Carolyn's request that we send it to staff for the request. So we have submitted that over and hope to have an update probably before the next council meeting. Mm-hmm. The only other thing I wanted to add was, as referenced earlier today, the death last week of Mr. Rivera. I put out a statement, sorry, and I'll just read that here, is a tragic incident for his family and our community. Our condolences are with his family and community members impacted by this unfortunate event. The Columbia Police Department is currently in the process of gathering the information and records which will be released to Mr. Rivera's family, and my thoughts are with them as they grieve the loss of their loved one. I do want to add, sometimes it is hard when you're an elected official in this position and you're waiting for all the information. And you want to be cautious and considerate before you put out your public statement. So I appreciate those who give us the patience and the grace, and I appreciate staff for updating us on the information as it comes in on what we can do. So thank you for that, DeCarlin. Any other council comments before I go to staff? All right, DeCarlin.
The only thing I have is I think there was a question about social services and what are we doing in order to support the police. And so we initially tried to hire in-house those co-responders, and what we realized is that we weren't able to hire anyone. We advertised for that job, and I think we had very few people to apply, and the ones who did apply, once we made an offer, didn't accept. And so what staff realized is instead of trying to hire in-house, let's contract out. So we put together an RFP, we set that out. We only had one provider respond, and that's Burrell. And so we're in the process of negotiating an agreement with Burrell to be that co-responder. Hopefully, we'll see that in the next couple of council meetings where we can actually move forward with an agreement. But we are working on it. It's not something that we've ignored. It's not something that we've decided that we didn't want to do. It's just, it was very difficult for us to hire someone. And so instead of trying to just kick it down the road, let's refocus and figure out how do we provide that service to our residents. And so that's where we're at right now.
Anything else?
No, that's it. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Appreciate that. And also appreciate your patience as what you thought you would get done a lot faster took longer because of our public improvement process.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Nancy, any comment?
No, thank you.
All right. Sheila, anything for you?
No.
All right. I'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 10:36.